Hello.
Hello. Hello, folks, and welcome to Totally Tank, the tankiest podcast in Tankville. I'm Rob.
And I'm John, and welcome back to Totally Tanked. This is episode 77, recording and streaming live on 6 December 2025, and today we're talking about the Vickers MBTs, which roared out of the sales brochure and onto the battlefields of South Asia as the Vijayanta.
And also in Africa. Anyway, a tank that beginner tank nerds have never heard about, but with over 2,400 built and involved in numerous conflicts, it's not an insignificant tank. So let's level up our game to intermediate tank nerds. I've been mentioning the Vickers MBT since October 2023 as a tank we should do an episode on, and here we are.
Now, before we keep going any further, we do want to say that, yes, for those on the video stream, we are wearing our tank helmets, genuine Warsaw packed. They're doing genuine Warsaw packed army surplus, but boy, they're hot and uncomfortable. So
we're taking these off. But for those who wanted to see what they look like,
there we go.
Oh, there we go.
And being Christmas, I'm in my my Santa suit, as in a suit that looks Santa-y, so I hope you're enjoying that. Now
it won't take up any more layers, though. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Well, I might take off. I'll take off the tie. But there we go. Okay.
And
now
we've got people online.
Now we're comfortable.
We've got Ragu watching from his computer.
Thanks, Ragu. That's very
Airsoft
helpful.
Adventure in Pennsylvania.
Good to see you.
Jonas Bond 2027. Thanks for looking at the helmets. Yes.
Yep.
And Brandon Make Stuff is here as Egos Some Annihilate.
Okay, nice. Good to see you, Brandon. Yes, I'm glad you enjoyed the suit and hats.
Anyway.
All right, what's next, Rob?
I've done my Christmas shopping for the year at redbubble.com, where you too can get your Totally Tank t-shirts and merch for all those family members who didn't know that what they really wanted was a t-shirt with a photo of a hand holding the water-cooled machine gun cover of the Sentinel tank.
Now, which hand was that, Rob?
That was my hand.
Rob's hand was...
I think it might have been the left hand. It would have been the left hand.
You were touching it.
I touched it, yes. As somebody said, show us where the bad mechanic touched you. Yeah. Well, I guess I can sort of qualify as that.
As a bad mechanic, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, you're right. I am a very bad mechanic. Now, onto our tank. The name, the Vickers MBT, or Vijayanta, which I looked up and is pronounced Vijayanta, but I'm sure I'll still get it wrong. And it means the victorious. Is what that Vijayanta means. So the tank also got the names Valiant, Valiant 2, Aljara, and Eagle. I do like how Vickers did try to maintain their theme of naming all their tanks with V. Yep.
In total contravention to all the other naming standards of the British Army.
Well, and because their tanks weren't accepted into British service, they don't also get the FV for fighting vehicle.
No.
So that's why I'm trying to make sure that everybody knows about who.
True, but you know, even going back to Valentine, a V tank was totally out of sequence for the rest of the British tank names, but so they did a good job, and their planes, they also had a series with V names. So they kept it going for a while, and then they had some customers who didn't want to name it something with a V, and they said, "Are you paying money?" And they said, "Yes, we are." And they said, "You can call it whatever you want."
Yeah. And g'day to Warwick in Brisbane. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
It was good to see you, mate.
And look, we haven't been going through the beer tube that fast. It's just that I brought around some Kingfisher beers today. It's an Indian beer. And they're slightly smaller bottles, so there wasn't quite as much in the beer tube as there would be for the VBs. But anyway, they're still very, very tasty on a hot day in Canberra here.
It is a sweltering day, and we are under bright lights here in the pod, and we're hoping the equipment doesn't overheat. But here we go.
Have we checked the humidity?
I've checked the dew point. It's at 4 degrees, so we can crank some cooling on the equipment.
All right, stats. Now, we've got 3 main stats for each of the different types of tanks. So the Mark 1 was also the Vijayanta, and then there's the Mark 3, and then there's the Mark 4/Mark 7 Valiant. They're in service. So the Mark 1 Vijayanta was in service from 1965 to 2008. The Mark III is in service from 1977 to present.
Still fighting in Africa, in Kenya and Nigeria,
So they were picked up in Kenya in 1977. 1981, they went to Nigeria, and however the Valiant, the Mark IVs and the Mark VIIs have no sales. Wars, what were they involved in? The Vijayanta was involved in the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War, plus a couple of other border skirmishes along there, which we'll get into. The Mark Is, because they were also sold to Kuwait.
They were present for the invasion of Kuwait, but they're not. There's not much to indicate they fought. But anyway,
they might have been sitting in combat. We'll get on to that.
Just quickly, Alan has joined us from Las Vegas. It's always lovely to have you on the line, Alan, and Hans Vormhat has also joined us. Thank you, Hans. Jonas is asking, can you explain to what ice does to beer? It makes it cold and watery.
Yes, which we don't do here in Australia unless...
that's a glycol tube in the middle of this, keeping it cold.
Yes,
not
Japan does ice in beer, but yeah, we don't. We just want to plan better is what we do. We have better logistics. All right. So the Mark 1s are also involved in the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. The Mark 3s, they were involved in the Somali Civil War, the Boko Haram insurgency, and which also includes Operation Linda Nichi. I don't want to know how to say that. And the Mark IV Valiant, nil conflicts except around the bar at sales expos in the Middle East. Number built. The Vijayanta has 2,200 built. The Mark IIIs have 226 built. And the different specifications of it. So the mass of the Vijayanta was 39 tonnes.
Now, this is super important because the Indians basically came to Vickers and said, we cannot use a tank that weighs more than 40 tonnes. Our roads are no good for it. If you can give us a tank that gets under that weight limit, we will buy it. And that's largely how it came into existence. So it's entirely about the weight limit and some good planning on the Indians' part saying, hang on, what can we actually move around the country? And 40 tonnes is the limit. I still maintain 40 tonnes should be the limit for everyone's tanks because everyone's got the same road issues in most places. Yeah.
David Mitchell-Green's joined us from, well, I'm assuming he's around somewhere, but he said thanks for the catch-up the other week. And Alan's having a Malbec and Nicaraguan underground cigars. There you go.
We'll have to break out the Cubans sometime, Alan, because we can get them. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah, this little room would not be great with cigar smoke.
I think you'd see Rob turn green and pass out. No. All right, so we were saying the Vijayanta was 39 tonnes, the Mark IIIs went up to 40 tonnes, and the Mark IVs 43 tonnes, and as the Valiant, and the Mark 7s up to 47 tonnes. All right. Length.
I would personally say the Mark 7 was never anything other than hazily defined prototypes, but yeah.
Yeah, well, they were spruiking them and
there was one that existed and flipped over, but yeah.
No, that was the Mark IV.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, length, 7.5 metres long. Width was 3.1 metres, then they got slightly wider with the Mark III at 3.2, and then the Mark IVs with the applique armour went out to 3.6 metres wide. And again, that could be taken off to fit within the rail constraints of however you're moving them around. Height, Vijayanta was 2.7 metres. Mark III was only 2.4.
That's very low.
Crew, they all had a crew of 4, commander, gunner, loader and driver. Armour. The Vijayanta had 80 mils of welded steel on the front of the turret and hull and 30 mils on the sides. Now, we'll get into why they had welded steel rather than anything else. The Mark IIIs had 40 mils of cast steel on the front of the turret and welded and cast steel. The Mark IVs had an aluminium hull with Trobham armour slabs and a steel turret.
That did not go well.
They were trying something different.
Yeah, it was so silly, but they tried it.
All right, they were trying something different.
Just to say, Airsoft Adventures just noted it reminds him of a beefed up Centurion. It's actually a lighter Centurion and a simpler Centurion and had a roomier turret, which was much loved. But it definitely had some Centurion heritage in its design.
Yeah, that was pretty much. People just wanted a newer Centurion without the price tag of a Chieftain.
It had a Chieftain engine in it. Well, I mean, it was also cheaper than Centurion.
And 12 tonnes lighter. So, all right. Main armament. They all went with. Well, sorry. They mostly went with the 105mm L7 gun, with the Vijayanta starting out with only 44 rounds carried in the vehicle. The Mark III then increased that to 50 rounds. The Valiant had the option, so the Mark IVs had the option of going for the 120mm L11 rifled British gun or a 120mm Rheinmetall smoothbore gun. Those were proposed, they looked at them, they thought about them, didn't really happen. As I said, it was only prototype vehicles. Secondary armaments, the Vijayanta has the 12.7mm ranging gun.
So basically a 50 cal.
Yep. They also threw a 50 cal pintle mount on the outside.
And it's funny because Vickers actually had a 12.7mm fully automatic weapon, but it was quite different to the 50 cal and nowhere near as good. And it must have been a bit of a sad moment for them when the Indians made them put a proper 50 cal on this thing.
There you go. And a 7.62 FN mag coax machine gun also. So basically, when you're looking at the turret of the
Double decker.
Yeah, well, it's got two little holes as you're looking at the tank to the right of the main gun barrel. Those little holes are your ranging gun and your 7.62 coax. The problem was they soon found that the accuracy of the L7 gun was out to 4,000 meters, or the combats were starting. Basically, your main gun was more accurate for longer distance than your spotting.
The ranging gun.
Than your ranging gun. So, if you thought you were ranging to something, it might be because it might be falling off ranging, whereas your main L7 gun was actually still firing straight towards the target.
Yeah, ranging machine guns is something that as a teenage boy I thought sounded like a really good idea, and as I look more and more and more at them, it's like, wait, so you're going to give them a warning you're about to shoot them?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or with an on-toss, you're hitting 6 warnings. All right. So the Valiant also came with the same thing, but they did come up with the idea of having an external EX34 chain gun in an external mount as a part of the experimentation of what they're going to sell to whoever they can sell to.
Now, Alan's having a go at us. He says that we're hypocrites because the external 50 cal on Sherman was bad and silly. I don't think we ever said that. Is my issue there, but
I just don't think
British
it was
Indian
fair.
Tech's brilliant.
Yes, Alan, that's exactly what we're saying.
We're more just saying that 50 cal, a proper 50 cal, is better than a Vickers 50 cal, and
12.7 millimeter.
yeah. But also that ranging guns in general aren't as good an idea as they might.
He's talking about the external ACAC.
Oh yeah, well, as an ACAC gun, they're of dubious value.
But they can shoot up soft-skin vehicles that aren't shooting back pretty nicely.
Yeah, at the expense of the commander being exposed. But okay.
Anyway, engines. The Vijayanta had the Leyland L60 from the Chieftain, but
this is so funny because it worked just fine by all accounts in the Vijayanta. Didn't work in Chieftain. The difference is almost entirely
20 tons.
20 tons, because all the issues with the poorly routed ducting in the Leyland L60 engine were exacerbated by being overloaded all the time in Chieftain. And if you take 20 tons of load off, it seems it ran reasonably well.
Yeah. The Mark IIIs, they installed a V12 General Motors Detroit diesel with 720 horsepower, and the Valiant the Mark IVs went with the Rolls-Royce diesel V12 with 1,000 horsepower. All right. So they
that sounds like a hell of an engine. I would like to see one of those somewhere.
Well, they did offer it for the Mark IIIs, but the buyers said, you know what? No, we'll go with the big American diesel.
Big American diesel where we get parts everywhere. Do we actually want Rolls-Royce parts for our Kenyan tanks? No.
I want a big American diesel that I can get some from anywhere I feel like.
Yeah. I can go down to a Caterpillar dealership and pick up some parts.
Yeah. All right, transmission. The Vijayanta had a semi-automatic gearbox. The Mark III had a self-changing gears with fully automatic gearbox, so the TN12 V5. And
is a self-changing fully automatic gearbox what we would think of as just an automatic gearbox?
I don't know. I'm not. So I'm putting these things, and I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
I read the words without having understanding. This is where I'm putting it out for the gearheads who actually know these things. And the Valiant had a TN12 1000 gearbox designed by the Self-Changing Gears Limited of Coventry Company. So you hope it's not a manual.
Yeah, well, you never know with British manufacturing.
All right, suspension. They had torsion bars, but the Valiant had additional secondary torsion bars and hydraulic shock absorbers to shield the aluminium hull from the heavier steel turret.
Which is getting to the problem of putting a steel turret on an aluminium hull. Yeah.
All right, ground clearance. They have 432 millimeters. They climbed basically 432 millimeters on the Valiant. On the Mark 1s and Mark 3s, the Valiants had up to 50 centimetres. There we go. 7 years ago. Fuel capacity, 1,000 litres for the Mark 1s and 3s, and the Mark 4s had 1,130 litres. Operational range of 490 to 530 kilometres.
So they really fixed the Centurion range issues, didn't they?
Yeah. They said, you know what, we're just going to put a lot more petrol in it and give it a diesel. L60, it's a multi-fuel.
Yeah. If you've got a troop of engineers to readjust it,
but the Valiant could go out to 550 kilometres. Maximum speed, the Vijayanta and the Mark IIIs are up to 50 kilometres an hour, which is fast enough. And the Valiant, they could burn it out to 61 kilometres an hour.
Which is insanely fast, but let's remember it's not a real tank.
No.
But, yeah.
All right, design and development. All right. It was built with the idea of being sold as an export tank. So there was never an idea that the Brits were going to buy it. There was always a case of, right, we're going to build a tank that's going to be sold overseas. This is back when Britain had some manufacturing and wanted to sell to there.
But also, you've got the Vickers company, was such a huge industrial conglomerate and so key to British success in two world wars and many other wars before that. And keeping Vickers alive at times, particularly during the disarmament period of in the interwar years, was
again when they were building export tanks that the British Army didn't buy.
Yep. But
Vickers 6-ton for those who don't want to know.
But also Vickers was the only company that had the facility to make heavy armour plate as needed on battleships and the British armoured aircraft carriers. And there were many times when naval planners were like, well, we should buy from this other company that's got some new process and is cheaper for making destroyers and cruisers. And they were like, well, hang on, but if we give them the contract, then Vickers goes out of business and we don't have any heavy armour plate production. So Vickers probably should have been nationalised at that point instead of being kept as a private concern, I guess is the issue. But aircraft, shipbuilding, tanks, making heavy stuff in enormous facilities.
But do you know what the problem with that, John, is?
Mm-hmm.
People and unions.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want to have the people and the
want to get paid.
and
the child labourers were upsetting people. I don't know if Vickers ever had child labourers.
We're being facetious.
I'm guessing they might have.
Anyway, it was being sold as an export tank. Now, we've been asked the question: does this export tank compare to the American Stingray export tank in some way?
The later versions.
I've never heard about the Stingray.
I don't know much about Stingray, but I do know that the later versions, like the Mark IV and 7, did compete against the Stingray in trials in places like Thailand. But it was not chosen. The later ones that had less success for all sorts of horrible reasons we'll get to were roughly in contention with the Stingray in that time. But the Stingray is a good one to add to our list because, until I started looking at this one, I didn't know much about that one.
No, did they get sold to India?
Not to India. No. Poor old Indians keep trying to buy from non-aligned countries, and countries go aligning on them.
All right, so they were being sold as an export tank to those countries that had bought and operated the Centurion, but weren't as willing to pay the asking price for the successor of the Centurion, the Chieftain. So Vickers came up with a cost-effective export design when, luckily, India was in the market for a new MBT and wanted to build it themselves.
So there's 2 points here for why India went for it. One was they wanted something cheaper than even Centurion and definitely cheaper than Chieftain. But also India wanted to repatriate the construction for very good national security reasons, and Vickers was willing to sell them the wherewithal to make this thing. And this kept Vickers alive for like 20 years. This sale, so it was a big deal.
Yeah. And the main requirement was that the Mark I had to have a L7 105mm rifled gun. It was accurate and effective and much cheaper to operate and supply than the L11 that was 120mm rifled gun that was being put into the Chieftain.
Look, let's face it, the L11 definitely had some good characteristics, and when Chieftain was successful, the L11 was a big part of it, but no one in the world wanted it, and everyone in the world had wanted the L7 105, so there is a clear and stark difference between the two there.
Yeah. India had first looked to West Germany, who from 1953 was allowed to think about privately building tanks again via the Porsche company, as there was no Bundeswehr yet. For a tank they could build themselves in 1954. So this is basically, they went to Porsche and said, hey, Germany, you're allowed to build tanks again. You've had 8 years in the wilderness, and we heard you were pretty good at building tanks in a certain period of time. So do you want to build us a tank, and then we'll start building it ourselves? So they went to them in 1954. Why West Germany is an interesting point. The thought of that being that because they were West Germany was not part of NATO or the Warsaw Pact at that stage. So India could say they were non-aligned.
They weren't really an independent country either, which was problematic.
But they were non-aligned. They weren't part of NATO.
Just quickly on the comments, Alan's asked, didn't Nigeria buy some? Nigeria bought a large number of the Mark IIIs, and we'll get to those. And Hans is asking...
Hello, Hans.
I wonder if the Brits called India 5 to 6 times a day trying to get them to purchase a tank. Oh, how the tables have turned. certainly the Vickers sales reps were, and we will get to the unbelievable incompetence of Vickers sales reps as time went on. Vickers in the 1950s seems to have been a very different company to Vickers in the 1970s. But, yeah.
Right. But West Germany joined NATO in May of 1955, which is around the time the Indian Panzer was cancelled. They wanted the tank 36 to 40 tons with a 90mm gun, a crew of 4 and 2 machine guns, one to the front for the loader and one to the rear for the commander, which is not what you want because your loader is busy loading and your commander is busy commanding. But that's what they were looking. That's what Porsche was looking at designing for them.
On the other hand, the Indians have gone to market looking for a 90mm gun, and the Brits come along and say, "How do you feel about a 105?"
This was before the L7, remember?
Sure, yeah, but it's what they got.
Yeah, and it looks similar to the Swiss Panzer 58, but they were unrelated. So there you go.
Well, they might have been coming off the same drawing boards, but
who knows? I don't know. Anyway, the Vickers made 2 prototype Mark 1s with the welded steel hull and turret, one with a pair of swing-fire missile pods at the rear of the turret and another without. Sorry,
I was just going to say, I mean, the Vickers were always trying to get swing fires onto every vehicle going, and the British Army was looking at this and basically came back saying, we just don't see a use case for having a 105 gun and a swing fire missile on the same vehicle, because you just want them in different places.
Yep. As the UK were not exporting the swing fire missiles, the prototype without the missiles was the one sold to India. The Vijayanta was the first indigenous Indian-built tank. They're very proud of that. The first 90 came from the UK in 1965, with India building the remaining 2,110 from 1965 to 1983. It had some common components and design features similar to the Centurion, already in Indian service, but lacked the armour thickness. The 80mm of front armour was seen as good enough to take on late World War II or early Cold War tanks, including the M47 and M48.
Now, Alan thinks you're talking too fast, Rob. So just take that on board.
You wound me, Alan. You wound me. All right? The faster I talk, the smarter I sound, all right? That's what I'm going for here. Otherwise, you'd all see through the facade. Speculation on the number of built of 2200 whether or not 2200 was actually built, and only 16 to 1800 gun tanks and 400 variants or upgrades to the gun tanks it floats around the place. So, like, what actually came out of the factory, or is it a case of you built 1800, of those 1800, we've returned 400 to the factory and changed them into other tanks.
It's funny how it's so hard to count military vehicles, and it has been. You can go back to the Peloponnesian War and the counting of the triremes, and the Byzantines had a whole counting of the ships things, and they always actually struggled to figure out exactly how many they had, because there's always one out the back that's being repaired and they don't want to count, but yeah.
And as we said before, whilst it was powered by the infamous Leyland L60 multi-fuel engine that caused the Chieftain so much hassle, it did not seem to have the same effect on the Vijayanta, probably because it weighed 20 tonnes less.
Now let's also remember that the L60 was a opposed piston, so it didn't have just one piston in each cylinder. It had 2 that had to meet exactly in the middle. And a 2-stroke engine as well, which, aside from burning a colossal amount of oil, is, if you want to use it outside of its power bands or its optimal bands, they're terrible. If you can use them consistently in their optimal bands, they're great, which is why they use them in the biggest ship engines in the world. But yeah.
I believe you. Okay. They went with a welded hull and turret, as India did not have the industrial capacity at the time to make large cast components.
And Australia, 1940s, we were making fully cast tank hulls. Suck it, India. On the other hand, India still makes tanks and we don't. But,
we make armoured vehicles.
We make boxes to German designs, but yeah.
And then sell them back to Germany. So it had less armour but more internal volume, making it roomier for the crew to operate inside. The decreased weight meant that it could also be set up with swim screens for flotation screens for swimming,
which are always the scariest looking things. If you ever go to a museum that's got one set up, you look at it and go, that is just asking to die. But yeah, they built it, and the propulsion was just thrashing the tracks through the water in the hope that
that's most armoured vehicles. move through the water.
Armoured amphibs. Well,
Yeah.
except, the Russians with PT-76 said, no, we're actually going to need some water jets on this thing. Yeah.
Whereas, most things...
Or propellers. The Sherman, all the DD, duplex drive tanks had propellers. With
even the ASLAV had propellers on it.
So Hans has just noted that the upside down one is an excellent picture. Yes, that's why we put it in.
Yep.
But it was part of the whole debacle of the later Vickers MBTs.
Yeah. All right. Further designs were put together for the Vickers Mark II in 1968 with an improved fire control system, cast steel turret design, internal mantlet, and new gun mounting, better tracks that were more reliable at higher constant speeds, and the possibility of installing a big American diesel engine to provide more power, along with an improved cupola, which provided better vision. But no prototypes were made. Vickers took some aspects of the Mark II design and incorporated them into the Mark III design in 1975, which dropped the flotation capability and was able to sign a contract to supply Kenya with 76 tanks and 7 ARVs. This contract kept Vickers afloat at the time when the UK was getting out of heavy manufacturing and not doing well money-wise.
Now, at this moment in history, Vickers are trying to do everything in these tanks. They're trying to make the ERA systems. They're trying to make the guns. They're trying to make the fire control systems. And, realistically, with a general decline in their capacity and bits of the company getting sold off, they were just trying to do too much, whereas a smarter company, certainly today, might do the design, but would be bringing in components from other companies that were more specialised in those things.
After that sale, they signed another contract with Nigeria in 1981 to supply 108 Eagle tanks, which is what the Nigerians called their versions of the Vickers Mark III, along with 15 bridge layers and 18 ARVs. The Nigerian Eagle tank is notable for having a thermal sleeve on the barrel.
Now, the Nigerian ones definitely have a really beefy thermal sleeve. It almost looks like a chieftain. It's so heavy. There are other pictures of other users with thermal sleeves at different times on them.
If you're operating in hot environments.
Yeah. So the thermal sleeve, it looks like a giant beer cooler around the barrel and reduces the effects of sunlight and heat distorting the barrel. With Chieftain, it was absolutely essential because the sort of steel they used was incredibly sensitive to, like a ray of sunshine would bend the barrel like a banana. So they had to even all that out.
If we haven't said before, people get into the poll and vote on what you think the Vickers MBT was, a cheap crap for cheap operators or a great way to sell tanks.
Yes, so at the moment we're on 57% for cheap crap for cheap operators, which I think is a little unfair. I think
it's got 3 votes to 4 votes of bad versus good. So
and a great way to sell tanks on 43%. Anyway, we will let you make your own judgments on that as the show goes on.
Vote early, vote often. All right. Further purchases were made by Nigeria in 1990 for 64 tanks delivered in 1995 for £282 million. So I was going to make a joke about a new generation of kids needing to get admitted to Eton from Nigeria, but because of my Western bias on the corruption of West African politics. But looking after kids sounds much better than what we do here, where the person who signs the government contract that then goes to work for the company that they signed a huge deal for straight away. And we could only wish to pay £282 million for 64 tanks these days, because that sounds so cheap. I had to check my biases there. I'm still making the joke.
Look, I mean, still buying more Vickers MBTs in 1990 was a very brave, courageous move, some might say, on the because Vickers was literally going out of business at that point. They must have been the last ones to roll off the factory in the shed before they stuck the BAE signs up.
Rolls-Royce first, and then BAE. Right. Still looking for some sales in the lucrative Cold War 1980s market. Vickers put together their design for the Vickers Mark IV Valiant because it starts with a V. They used an aluminium hull with chobham armour to keep the weight down, back when they thought that making armour out of aluminium was a good idea.
And remember that they had the same problem with CVRT. Well, the British in general had the same problem with CVRT, which they said, we'll make an aluminium hull, it'll be great. And then they realised aluminium bends and flexes so much that by the time they'd put in enough extra metal to stabilise it, it weighed as much as if they just started with steel in the first place, but didn't have the protection values of steel. Yeah.
And you think they could buy it on the cheapest that fell off the back of a truck? Boom, boom.
Boom! Ha! We were referring to the Valiant that fell off a truck.
Yes, it's on the screen now.
Perfect timing.
But instead, it
For those who are on the audio feed, which is most of our listeners, totallytank.net, we will have all the pictures up for you to see tomorrow. So,
but instead, it did a sales cruise of the Middle East in 1983, along with its frenemies, the AMX-40 and the Challenger 1, to see who could pick up the richest oil sheik. It had so seriously, they put it on board a transport ship along with the Challenger 1 and the AMX-40. They sailed around the Middle East to say who would like to buy our newest version tanks, and they went to all these trade shows in the UAE and around the Middle East and the Red Sea and Persian Gulf, and said, "What do you think, folks?"
Which, it was roughly in this period that Dubai asked for an evaluation version, and they accidentally shipped a broken down Mark 1. And Dubai said, "Wow, that's a piece of crap." So to accidentally ship the wrong tank for a sales call, I just don't know how it happened.
There must have been a lot of cocaine being done at that stage. You got to say this would have been some good blow going around of having some fun at that stage.
Yeah, it's it just because.
For those who don't know, aluminium means aluminum in American.
In American, yeah. But it boggles my mind because I've shipped things across the world for sales demos. Mostly cases of beer when I worked for a brewery, but I would actually go down to the loading dock and check that the correct thing was going. And the idea that you would ship a tank for a multi-million-dollar sales contract and not have anyone just go and eyeball it and check the serial number that you've got the correct version going, I don't comprehend how you can be that complacent. It was only the one
on the back of the warehouse on the right.
Yeah.
The back of the warehouse on the left. Yeah, that'll do. That looks like a tank.
Yeah, just check people's work, folks. Just do it.
Now, have we said hello to
verify?
Have we said hello to Ego Sumnile?
Yeah, that's Brandon.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's hard to tell these days. Anyway, Challenger 1. It had a facelift in 1980. Sorry, back to the Vickers Mark 4. It had a facelift in 1984 to become the Valiant 2. And they then tried on a German hull to reinvent themselves as the Mark 7 in 1985.
So they had this turret they were trying to sell as the universal turret, and it was apparently really good. And a bit like the way Cockerell in Belgium just sells turrets to countries now.
Yeah, sell turrets, got everything on it, and you just whack it on top of whatever
hull you want. But apparently this universal turret on a Leopard 2 hull was exceeded every other vehicle in trials and did incredibly well. And then the Germans said, no one's selling our Leopard 2 hulls to put their filthy turrets on. So there you go.
So they tried to reinvent themselves as the Mark 7 in 1985, whilst thinking about trying on different hats, as in guns. So that's where they said, look, we can fit in a L11 rifled 120mm smoothbore, or rifled 120 millimeter L11, or the smoothbore Rheinmetall 120 millimeter.
The L44, yep.
But then, and there was also a French Giat.
Yeah,
100.
But this is classic salesman bullshit, right? Where salesman goes saying, "Oh, you can have whatever gun you want. We'll make it work," and we don't actually know that they would have worked particularly well. This was just Vickers desperately trying to sell a car that any gun will work if you put it in. We'll make it work for you, and we all know that once the salesmen have their sales, they stop promising you the upgrades.
But then one day in 1989, it went out for an exercise on the Salisbury Plain and was never seen again. A tank being built for export, i.e. not for the main Cold War players, but designed for working in an NBCD environment.
So it's nuclear, biological, chemical, and what's the D?
I used to know this stuff.
Okay, anyway, so we're talking about protection from stuff in the air.
Yeah. Either shows that they wanted to build a universal tank for any situation, or they were looking at the state of the world in the 1980s, and though anyone could be throwing around nukes and chemical weapons at any stage, which, if you think about Iran, Iraq, and India, Pakistan, wasn't an unreasonable thought.
It's funny how hardening against nuclear fallout and chemical weapons has... thankfully, as a species, we seem to have moved past that as a risk that needs to be mitigated against. But who knows? It might come roaring back into fashion.
It might, well, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, being developed by a private company in Vickers, they could build at speed without the testing of individual components that the Ministry of Defence would carry out. Which
vertical integration can work incredibly well when it works, but you've just got this problem that why are we as a company designing and building explosive reactive armour that no one is ever buying? That's an enormous cost. It has enormous problems as well, particularly when you're struggling financially.
So they could come up with a lot of great ideas which look great on paper, but when it was all put together, the showstoppers started popping up and saying, you know what, this tank doesn't actually work. So Vickers was bought out by Rolls-Royce in 1999 and then was glomped into the behemoth that is BAE Systems shortly after.
There are people who make the joke and do it really well in memes in certain tank-related forums where there's a shed with a drain pipe that was a Vickers facility and then was a Rolls-Royce facility, is now a BAE facility, and every time a new British armoured vehicle is rolled out, it rolls past this shed with the drain pipe, and the livery on the shed changes every time, but it's always the same shed.
All right, now we get into the operators. India. As we said before, they bought their first 90 Mark 1s in 1965 from the UK and built their own 2110 over the next 20 years. India retired all their Vijayantas in 2008. Kuwait bought 70 Mark 1s. So this is, again, the Mark 1s. I don't see many of them. From Vickers in 1970. They called theirs the Al Jahara. Which is a city in Kuwait.
I would say more a suburb given the size of Kuwait, but yeah.
It's its own city. It's got its own football team these days. It's the important thing. So when I looked up Al Jahara, of course, Al Jahara Football Club was the main thing that comes up for it, with improved air filters and without the flotation aids. Most were destroyed or captured during the 1990 invasion by Iraq. Iraq, surprisingly enough, captured the Kuwaiti Vickers Mark 1s in August of 1990. All were destroyed or scrapped. Kenya bought 79 from the UK and they were delivered from 79 to 1983. Kenya bought overall 136 Nigeria bought 136 Mark 3s from the UK, delivered from 1983 to 1995. Boko Haram, the Islamist jihadis in West Africa, captured and operated a few of the Nigerian Vickers Mark 3s. They were eventually knocked out and recaptured by the Nigerian army.
Can you imagine being Boko Haram and you're like, hey, we've captured a tank, and they're like, oh, cool. Is it a T-72? Is it something cool? And like, no, it's a Vickers Mark 3. So where are we getting the manuals for that?
Should be all fine. All right, Tanzania bought 4 ARVs, Vickers Mark 3 ARVs in 1989 in order to recover their Chinese tanks. So there you go. So they got a Type 59.
That would have been a fascinating sales meeting with the Tanzanians wanting 4 ARVs. And Vickers were like, hey, if you want to buy some, we'll sell them.
All right, Alan's saying Dick Cheney wrote a very sternly worded letter to Saddam Hussein saying, we treat chemical weapons as nukes. Response in kind. There you go. So, yes, it is... America, while they say they only have nukes as their deterrent, still have a hell of a lot of chemical weapons and biological weapons that they do stuff with.
Anyway, thankfully that is beyond the scope of this podcast. So let's keep rolling on that.
Anyway, conflicts. The Vickers MBT was not ready or deployed for the 1965 Indo-Pakistani War. Because it had only just arrived and they hadn't rolled them out yet. But there was a war happening just as they were getting there. But it was involved in what became the Bangladeshi Liberation War that then became the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971.
This is something that's largely forgotten in Western minds, but the horror of the Bangladeshi independence just needs talking about. I mean, there were...
We did talk about it in the PT-76
we did talk about it in that one, but there were millions of refugees. There was... The US, under Nixon, was completely backing the Pakistanis in their bloodthirsty behaviour in Bangladesh.
What was East Pakistan? It was one country, East and West Pakistan, divided by India.
Yeah, so it was East Pakistan. Pakistan ruled it, but the Bangladeshis didn't want to be ruled by the Pakistanis. But because Pakistan was very closely aligned with the CIA, they managed to get an enormous amount of American support. Richard Nixon was in his tapes recorded saying no one's going to care about any number of brown people dying.
And this is when they're having riots and 300,000 people are dying.
Yeah.
Right? Not just a case of one or two or a couple of hundred. There would be events where over days, multiple days, there would be people being murdered by mobs and the government and everything else, and 300,000 people. And that's not including the cyclone that happened to flood out the country at the time as well, which sparked... that killed 300,000 people. Then that caused riots that then, because there was no food or water or anything else, that then killed another 300,000 people. So it was a case of, it's pretty nasty.
And there is also, it's well worth giving credit to someone who actually tried. George Harrison of the Beatles, of all freaking people, put together an enormous aid concert for Bangladesh that not only raised money that saved lives, but also raised a huge amount of public awareness that this horrific war was going on. And India deserves credit. India is not always a perfect player on the world stage. There is no country that has been. But India devoted...
Bhutan, I'd like a word.
Yeah. But India devoted a lot of blood and treasure in being on the right side of history, in trying to do the right thing in this war.
The Prime Minister at the time, Indira Gandhi, pretty sure, basically said, you know what, I could either deal with the millions of refugees coming across the border from East Pakistan into India, or I could just go in there and have a regime change and actually do the things. And she said it was cheaper to go to war than it was to deal with the refugees. That was one of the
calculations, sure. But they still saved an enormous amount of human misery with their intervention. And then they had to fight the Pakistanis in the
West.
Yes, in the West.
Yeah. It was funny when I was looking at the conflict because when you look at Bangladesh, India surrounds to the east, to the north, and to the west. And when they're saying, okay, it was the Western Front, well, it could have been the Western Front of Bangladesh, but no, what they're talking about is the Western Front of India. So, it was, the forces were coming in from the west, the north, and the east on Bangladesh, but they were also involved in fighting in the the west of India, the east of Western Pakistan, just to be fun. All right, so anyway, getting back to the conflict itself. The PT-76 gets most of the glory for rolling into East Pakistan and taking out the Pakistani Chafis, which are there, which we've covered before, but the Vijayantas were deployed to the west of India and took part in the Battle of Basantar, where the Indian Army took out a larger force of Pakistani troops and tanks. But again, their involvement was overshadowed by the Centurions, who distinguished themselves with a young Second Lieutenant Arun Ketapal, destroying 7 tanks before dying and becoming a national hero. Then there was Operation Blue Star in 1984. Since the mid-70s, Sikh activists had been seeking greater autonomy in the Indian Punjab, not the Pakistani Punjab, the Indian Punjab. In 1982, separatists had taken up residence in the Golden Temple.
Well, occupied, but yeah.
in Amritsar. Well, they were invited in, supposedly, in Amritsar.
I mean, I can remember as a child watching this on the news every night, the siege of the Golden Temple, and then the slaughter when continue.
Yeah. All right. So mustn't have been Indira Gandhi in 1971. It must have been somebody else.
Like Nehru or someone. But yeah.
Anyway, they were probably murdered by.
Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister for a long time. But anyway, let's keep rolling.
All right. In 1984, when the Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi approved the army to move into the Golden Temple, they expected little resistance, but were repulsed by heavily armed Sikh militants. The army then attacked with full force, including 7 Vijayanta tanks, attack helicopters and artillery. The fighting continued for 5 days until the Sikhs ran out of ammunition. They were forced to surrender. Indira Gandhi was then assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards some months later.
It was a piece of enormous hubris on the part of Indira Gandhi to have Sikh bodyguards after
they are very militant people, and that's their role.
Sikhs are amazing fighters and warriors, and
that's why they always carry a knife.
If you go into British history of the Indian Raj, The Sikhs actually came incredibly close to kicking the British out of India at one point, and were largely betrayed by their own leadership, which is a story as old as time.
It's about what the British do. I mean, it's what they do. Anyway.
But the point is that Indira Gandhi was incredibly complacent in committing a huge atrocity and wiping out these Sikh militants in the holiest of places to Sikhs, and then hoping that the guys she was paying to keep her alive would keep doing that in that situation.
Didn't work out well. Anyway, some months later, she was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards, which led to mass anti-Sikh riots in India and killings. Again, you want to throw around the number of maybe 300,000 people killed in those riots. All right. I will warn people out. This is probably going to be a fairly long episode because
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, long interview to go. So strap in, folks. It's
we're doing the mailbag from all the horrible comments you people have left,
and lovely ones too.
They're mostly lovely ones, but the horrible ones are the ones we remember.
Yeah, the fun ones. All right. So anyway, it will be a long episode today. All right. I found one mention of the Vijayanta being deployed to Sri Lanka as part of the Indian peacekeeping force in 1987.
But let's call it peacekeeping. That sounds pretty fun.
But notes only listed T-72s being deployed, and in what was hoped would be a peacekeeping operation between the Tamil Tigers and the Sri Lankan government, but quickly became a war on the Tamil minority that led the Sri Lankan government. Even the Sri Lankan government was appalled by, and they made the Indian forces leave in 1990.
It was quite the disaster.
Yeah. These were the Tamil Tigers that Indian Army intelligence had been building up 10 years beforehand, and they were sure, look, these guys work for us, they'll come to heel straight away. Instead, it became a reinforcing example of why India does not deploy its military to other countries except as part of UN peacekeeping operations or short wartime forays into Pakistan.
Now, Rob, I'm just letting you know I've left you another half glass in the beer tube.
Thank you, John. Logistically, there we go. All right. Again, there are mentions that the Vijayanta was involved in the Indian-Pakistan Kargil War of 1999, fought at a high altitude, and again during the Operation Parakram in 2002. But it seems more like the tanks were in the order of battle of the regiments that were deployed in the Indian Punjab district and not actually used in battle themselves. But I also feel that my research might be missing something, and I should be able to find more if I could actually understand Hindi. Because there was a lot of stuff there, and in the case of watching it, and there's only Hindi.
I just want to quickly go back to just talking about Indian Vijayantas. I've always said that India has the coolest paint schemes on their tanks, and the slideshow that we've got going on the audio feed has some beautiful and incredible camouflage. And normally you want your camouflage to be extremely nondescript so it doesn't pop out. But India is a country that has incredibly vibrant greens in the foliage and incredibly bright sun and lots of sand as well. It lends itself to these absolutely beautiful camouflage schemes, and the Vijayanta has enjoyed a lot of them. Yeah.
There you go. Alan's just saying he's decanting the third bottle of right now.
Well, you've got to have it ready for an hour's time.
Exactly, so. Right. All right. August 1990, 2nd of August 1990, Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. We've covered before the Battle of the Bridges and the chieftains involved.
Now, I suspect what happened here was that the elite soldiers in the Kuwaiti army were in the chieftains, and that's why the big stand at the Battle of the Bridges was in the chieftains.
Well, remember, it was a holiday, and so that's why nobody was on duty.
Well, sure, but the far less elite, Vickers MBTs just never got into the fight, as far as we can tell.
Well, but Kuwait was also operating Vickers MBTs at the time. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any notes of their involvement in the conflict besides the photos of them taken parked at Camp Taji, which is just 27 kilometres north of Baghdad in Iraq after being captured. So that's where Saddam put all his captured vehicles and did his chemical weapons development and all sorts of fun stuff there. So whilst the Kuwaiti army was caught unprepared, it's possible the Vickers MBTs were sitting in a compound when the invasion happened. It's also possible they were uncrewed at the time and non-operational. The way things usually go is that whilst I cannot find anything now, the week after the podcast, when the algorithm overlords catch up, they'll start feeding me the info I was looking for yesterday. All right. Kenya has been involved in skirmishes along the border with Somalia since the Somalian civil war broke out in 2011, with their Vickers being deployed to fight against the Islamist jihadis during Operation Linda Nichi In 2012, Kenyan troops assisted the Ethiopians and allied Somali forces in recapturing the retreating Somali Islamists. The tanks were mobilised for border conflicts against Uganda in the 1980s, but negotiations de-escalated the situation.
I just want to say the Horn of Africa, so we're talking Somalia, and around there, they've had a lot of big tank battles in the last 50 years, and very few people ever look at them seriously. And we probably don't give them. Everyone's got an issue with the sources. But a lot of big tank fighting and probably deserves more attention. Yeah.
All right. Nigeria continues to use their Eagle tanks, which is the Vickers Mark III, in the fight against Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria. One of the operational names for the conflict was Lafia Doyle in 2015, which saw the Eagle tanks along with AMRAPs, T-72s, artillery, helicopters and fighter bombers surround and destroy a compound of Boko Haram in Sambisa. The Nigerian army purchased old T-72s in 2014, but found their Eagles could be maintained more easily and were more reliable. They have since purchased Chinese VT-4 tanks and are using those to combat Boko Haram, as well as part of Operation Tura Takai Bango.
I still think it's really important to note here that T-72, which is with good reason held up as certainly a good tank for its time, in a side-by-side comparison, the Vickers MBT was considered by its user to be a better, more useful vehicle. That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, they also didn't get a lot of spares when they were buying from ex-Czech,
I'm not sure
Ukrainians and Polish.
Yeah, but getting spares for Vickers MBT isn't that simple either.
No. However, they lost an Eagle and a Vickers ARV in 2023 to a vehicle suicide bombing in Arege in Malam Fatori. So there you go. Models. All right. The Vickers Mark I Vijayanta was the same as the Vickers Mark I, but made by India. The Vijayanta Mark 1A was fitted with improved fire control system and new sights. The Mark 1B fitted with even newer sights. The Mark 1C fitted with an even newer fire control system. And then you have the Vijayanta Mark II Bison. They like using Bison as a company name.
Cows are a sacred animal in India. So.
In the 1980s, India had thought their next tank would be the Arjun, but the less said, the better. So instead, they started looking to upgrade the Vijayanta and dubbed it the Mark II Bison, with prototypes being completed in the early 90s. It would install a T-72 engine, increasing the horsepower, improved fire control system, a Soviet GPS equivalent, and Kanchan composite armour. The plans, however, were shelved in 1997, and the upgrade process was officially discontinued in 2000. As the plan to phase out the Vijayanta had finally been made, and they were saying, yep, they're going in a couple of years, and they ended up going in 2008. Meanwhile, back in Blighty, Vickers was coming up with the Vickers Mark II, where they wanted to add the Swingfire missiles, just when the Ministry of Defence was adding them to everything.
Including the regimental goat.
This is 1968, but not tanks, all right? So they weren't adding the Swingfire missiles to the Chieftain.
So the concept of operations was that these, as far as we can tell, reasonably good anti-tank missiles that you basically needed a vehicle to carry were much better used in vehicles that needed to destroy tanks but weren't tanks and weren't as useful in an actual tank that already had a great big gun.
All right. So what they said, the MOD said, look, there's no point wasting armour and tracks firing out to 4 kilometres with the missile, and there's no point using the missiles up close when the gun does more. So it's better and cheaper, and it takes up less room with more ammunition. So basically that's why they said we're not putting a Swingfire missile on a tank. Therefore India didn't get the Swingfire. The twin double launchers were inset into the bustle that could raise up and fire, and reloading was an external and manual process. So basically you had to climb out, raise the tubes up and load them in by hand. So,
Look, I'm always a bit sceptical about pop-up things because, you know, if the maintenance isn't perfect, then
it doesn't pop up.
It just doesn't pop.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's you see plenty of, you remember cars used to have pop-up headlights? You don't see that so much
Porsche
anymore.
911 still.
Yeah, it's pretty rare though.
I like the ones with the little eyes for headlights. Anyway, also the Mark II also had a driver's blister sticking out so they could see forward to the ground forward of the tank. It was never built. However, there is some speculation that there was never a Mark II Vickers MBT. And what was seen was the Vickers Mark I with swing-fire missiles.
Just want to say thank you to Hans, who's just dropped us $30 to fill the next beer tube. Thank you.
Do you think he waited till we finished that one?
I think he saw me pull it away and started typing out the comment. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Hans. All right, the Mark III, taking some of the design choices of the Mark II, but without the swing-fire missiles, but the main difference being the conversion of using the big American diesel engine, plus updated fire control systems and optics that were available in the late 70s.
Sorry, Rob, can I trouble you for a beer, please?
We have beer, yes. We have...
Because we've emptied the beer tube and we're still going. This is going to be a marathon, people. I hope Alan's got a fourth bottle of wine ready to go.
They also, the Mark III, they also decreased the turret armour down to 40 millimetres, but the angled shape meant it provided the same thickness and protection for steel. Plus the changed turret shape and internal mantlet allowed for a further 3 degrees of gun depression. The Mark IV Valiant, because it starts with a V, was closely associated with the hopeful upgrade of the upgrade to the Mark VII Valiant II or Mark VII/2. The Mark IV and Mark VII had an aluminium hull with a steel turret mounted on top with Chobham armour slabs mounted all over. Except they weren't mounted all over. The Chobham armour slabs were mounted on the front of the hull and the turret, so they could withstand a 120 millimetre round, or withstand a 100 to 115 millimetres, so the T55 to the T62 millimetre rounds, not the 125. Then at the front of the turret and hull sides, so they could withstand an 84 millimetre Carl Gustav. So basically, as soon as you got around to more than 60-degree front arc, they could withstand a 84 millimetre Carl Gustav. And then as you move further back along the sides of the tank, the Chobham armour slabs were set up to withstand an RPG-7, but the slabs at the rear of the sides and the rear of the tank were empty and provided no protection at all. So well,
Chobham's heavy.
This was all in order to reduce the weight of the tank. The aluminium hull also reduced the mass of the tank, but the weight of the steel turret was too much for the aluminium structure, which could crack under the wrong conditions, such as bouncing across uneven ground at speed, which tanks regularly have to do, or falling off the back of a truck and landing upside down.
Yeah, I mean, falling off the back of a truck is not something you plan for, but has happened in the last month. Yes, but everything about this tank cracked and broke. Apparently, the gun capture would also just fall off. Vickers was definitely into the terminal decline phase of their...
Right, so they took the universal turret of the Mark VII and shipped it off to Brazil to form the turret of the Osorio. The Osorio, as John was saying, won the tank trials against the Leopard 2 and the Abrams and was set on being sold to the Saudis, but the US stepped in and made sure that they bought the Abrams instead, because they couldn't have all that oil money going to Brazil. The universal turret could take the L7-105, the L11 smoothbore, the L11 rifled, the French Giat smoothbore, the Rheinmetall smoothbore, and it seems to be one of the first modern tanks with thermal imaging for the driver and the gunner. And the thermal fire control system could also alert the gunner to any changes to the thermal images, like a heat signature moving across the screen at range. So basically, it'll pop up and say, I've seen a change in the thermal image. You should look at this and maybe fire around that way. It's one
of those things that, managing the interfaces so that crew under stress.
I was about to say, if you've been awake for 24 hours and you're looking at a tiny little screen and saying, is that a thing I should shoot at or not? It's nice to have a system that pops up and say, you should look at this really hard and see whether or not you want to fire around down it. The way the Chobham armour was situated on the hull meant that the fuel caps could not be accessed when fully armoured up.
Yeah, so basically the Chobham on the back of the turret meant they couldn't actually access the fuel ports. It was an absolutely miserable design failure.
So the crew would have to dismount the slabs in order to refuel. The driver also had a huge blind spot to the front of the tank, which made manoeuvring very dangerous. The Mark VII/2 Valiant 2 mounted the universal turret on the chassis of the Leopard 2, as John was saying before, in order to generate some sort of sales, but no one was buying. Variants. India built the following Vijayanta variants: the catapult self-propelled gun, where a Russian M46 field gun was mounted on a lengthened Vijayanta hull in an open-topped armoured box structure. The Kartik bridge layer mounted a Warsaw-packed scissor bridge, was first introduced in 1989. The Vijayanta ARV was based on the Mark I hull, was lightened and optimised to keep the weight below 40 tonnes for a lifting capacity of 10 tonnes and a pulling capacity of 25 tonnes. Around 200 of the tanks were converted, replacing older models. They had a CEASE for Canal Embankment Assault Equipment Vehicle, which was a specialist bridging system designed to overcome bank canals obstacles up to 4.5 metres found on the Indian western borders with Pakistan. And it's since been replaced by the DRDO Savata bridge system. They also had the Vijayanta 105mm self-propelled gun.
Sorry, 155, Rob.
155.
Yeah, it's a big gun.
Big gun. A standard chassis equipped with the British 155mm artillery turret. Thoroughly tested, but not adopted for service by the Indian Army. Meanwhile, Vickers built the following to support their Mark III sales. They had the Mark III ARV, was designed to be deployed with or without a 4-tonne crane for changing power packs in the field, but all had a 25-tonne recovery winch and a anchor spade mounted at the front of the hull, which can be used for entrenching other tanks. You'll sometimes see them listed as an ARRV, so RRV, that stands for Armoured Repair and Recovery Vehicle, which will be the ones with the crane and the replacement power pack. Then there was the Mark III AVLB, which is the bridge layer designed to transport, launch and recover scissors bridge with a length of 13 metres, 13.4 metres. Now we get into legacy.
Hey.
The Vickers MBT, always the bridesmaid and never the bride.
Except for that Indian sale.
With 2,200 to 2,400 built, more than the Chieftain at 1990 built, and being involved in a number of wars and tank battles, you'd think they would get more recognition. Maybe it needed a catchy name.
It wasn't used by English speakers, I would say, but anyway.
Maybe it is. Anyway, maybe it needed a catchier name. Should have gone with Valiant from the start. Better branding and more marketing, or maybe it just wasn't quite distinctive enough and looked too much like a Centurion for anyone to notice the difference. All right.
I just want to say that in preparing the imagery for the show, the video version of this show, I had a real problem in that the era of that this tank was from, there weren't a huge number of photographs taken because it was pre-digital cameras. And the ones that were made are largely still copyrighted, so not available for us to just take and use. And I would like
to try not to do that.
I would like to say that if BAE had a bit of cunning, they'd dump their photo archives into Wikimedia with a Creative Commons license and let their Vickers heritage shine. And I think that would help them and help everyone else. But anyway, that's just me.
So, to my thoughts, it was a cut-price British Leopard without the German gravitas. That got no love at home, but on paper ticked all the boxes and was open to being a versatile platform that could be fitted to meet the needs of a modern tank into the 1990s beyond, but couldn't quite move out of the 1960s or get a real chance to shine.
I mean, using they've almost set the standard that Leopard 1 and AMX-30 followed in terms of saying we want enough armour to keep out small arms, but we're not going to try and stop a
125mm or 115
or a heat missile. And until Chobham armour was invented, composite armour was invented, steel armour couldn't keep up. So it made a lot of sense. A lot of other things used it. It was one of the first to go that way, so that was pretty good. Hello to Kilo 1947. Anyway, I just want to read out the plaque text from the Vijayanta on display in Bhopal. It's in the slideshow, but I'm going to read it in for everyone else. The Vijayanta was the first indigenous battle tank of the Indian Army. The prototype was completed in 1963 and the tank ended service in 1965. It had a crew of 4 soldiers with a max speed of 50 km per hour and an accurate 105mm main gun, along with machine guns. It was instrumental in rout of Pakistani forces in the Punjab theatre during the Indo-Pak War 1971. The tank went to war for the first time with 66 Armoured Regiment. The regiment led a bold charge on the enemy into the Battle of Burj Fatehpur in Amritsar sector. The Vijayanta has served the nation commendably and has been the mainstay of the Indian Armoured Corps for over 35 years. The nation salutes the chariot of fire on whose bare back rode the iron men of Armoured Corps all the way into the pinnacle of martial excellence. And I just want to quickly note that Indians have a slightly different approach to written English, but considering they are the second largest group of English speakers in the world, they definitely get a vote on usage or neglecting the definite article if they want to. If you're wondering, the list is the USA is the largest group of English speakers in the world, followed by India, Pakistan, Nigeria, and then England.
People forget Nigeria's a big country, right?
Yeah.
All right, and with that, folks, we will leave you. Oh, sorry, refer to the poll.
We're not leaving. This show's going on and on and
on. We've got probably another hour and a half to go, boys and girls. So, as I say, strap in. We'll be refilling beers and coming back with a beer review. But right
the poll is the big question, Rob. How are we doing?
It's the Vickers MBT was a cheap crap for cheap operators, 56% out of 9 votes, and a great way to sell tanks, 44%.
So it's a great way to sell tanks is creeping up.
5 to 4 is what we're going. So get in there, let us know what you think. And right now we're going to go to an interview with one of our favourite people, Lottie the Tank Whisperer, and see what she's been having going on for the last.
So who would have thought that? I was trying to explain this to my parents the other day that, there's this woman, she's relatively young, she's incredibly good at making old tanks work, and as a result, very wealthy men who own old tanks pay her enough money to make a living to make their tanks go.
She gets to drive them.
And she's also terrifyingly fast when she drives tanks. All right, this is us talking to Lottie, and we will be back in about 40 minutes to read through the mailbag and then talk about some things happening in the world. And we will try and touch as well on issues with blowing up boats in the Caribbean. All right. So we are joined now by long-time friend of the show, one of the very first interviews we ever did, Lottie the Tank Whisperer. Lottie, welcome back to Totally Tanked.
Thank you for having me.
So it's been a few years since you've been on the show. Can you tell us what you've been up to in the last few years?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a long story. Obviously, the last time we spoke, I was still working at the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum. That is no longer the case. Myself and my now business partner, Peter Cordell, we resigned from the museum, and we have been traveling both around Australia and internationally, fixing tanks for our new business, Tankside Assist. So we went all the way down to Victoria, New South Wales. We even stopped by Canberra just momentarily. One of our clients is there. And yeah, we started predominantly with Centurion restorations. We've done full Meteor 27-litre V12 Meteor engines that are inside the Centurions. We full stripped those down, put them back together, get them running, full nut and bolt restorations. So we've been doing that. And we've also been doing quite a bit of work internationally in Canada and Japan. So that's
fantastic.
Some points.
Can I ask if your Canberra client owns a replica Stug, or is it someone different?
No, they're definitely someone different. They've only got the one tank. It's not in Canberra, but he works in Canberra. His tank is currently, where did he last leave it? I'm pretty sure it's in New South Wales. But yeah, it's a Centurion. No significant history from what we gathered from it, but it is a proper B barrel, like pretty much the setup of what they would have looked like in Vietnam, with the Australians, of course. And yeah, I managed to get the full turret suite on that going, so it's got full stab controls and infrared, which is really good.
Wow. So, I mean, the skill set you must have, because you're moving now from just getting old engines going and, KV2s in T-34s and the like, up to very complex, quite modern electronics. How's that transition going for you?
Not too bad, really. Peter, of course, who I was apprenticed to when I was at the museum, like I mentioned before, he's my business partner. So the engine side, he's never been fazed by an engine in his life, I don't think. So I got a lot of training from him. So the engine side's probably the more difficult side, but we really have no issues with that. And even today in our current workshop here in Cairns, because we've decided to settle down in a stationary spot for the majority of our now restoration projects rather than traveling around. We did that for 2 years, and that was a bit much. But the more, I suppose, complicated stuff like the gunnery system on Centurion, once you sort of muddle it through your head a little bit and do one, they're not too hard. There's certainly more complicated systems. Anything that's got a computer, don't bother asking me. That's beyond the scope of what we deal with. There's far smarter people than me that do that. But we do a lot of the electromechanical. There we go, tongue tied. Electromechanical engineering and the hydraulics, if the turrets have those. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you've got your YouTube channel, Lottie the Tank Whisperer.
Yes.
Yep, which is a wealth of information, people wanting to see you restoring vehicles. Now, you've launched a podcast, which for our podcast audience will be quite thrilling. Can you tell us about Turret Monsters?
Yeah, so Turret Monsters it's basically what I've always felt was missing within the community, though the wider global community of tank dorks, as we put them. And that is basically, we want a one-stop shop place where people can get like their weekly news and community feedback, just to sort of get more grounded if you're entering the space, or if you're long-term tank fan, and you're coming back into it and you have no idea what's going on, what events are going on, when's Tank Fest, when's Osama Fest, etc., etc. We basically just do a weekly podcast now, where not only do we get the feedback in from the wider community of tank dorks, but we put that into a palatable news segment, essentially. So that's, I suppose, the quick bit of it, but we do also touch on to just other random stuff that people want us to talk about. So the last few episodes, we were talking about movies and video games and all sorts of media, just like, where can people in the community find cool stuff to look at outside of just museums. And we have already started to get guests on. So we would love to have both of you on as well, because it's our tagline is basically, it's for the tank community by the tank community.
I just like that. I just like that you've decided to lean in hard into the girls and Panzer animes and so forth. I've been trying to promote that into the tank world of listeners, and I think I'm glad that you and Ted are both joining in with that, and the way you went through the movie and all the various bits and pieces of how they reference real life stuff in the show. So it's not just Japanese girls driving around tanks. It's actually got some leanings into the historical side of things.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the only, I really want to, next time on my trip to Japan, which I've actually been working with quite a lot of Japanese on their sort of stuff. But for those who don't know, Japan actually has really strict laws regarding bringing any armored vehicle into the country. I believe there's only one or two in private hands. So helping them actually help keep their vehicles in running condition has been something that we've been really privileged to do. But the only way they can really get their fix for tank related stuff is they actually make one-to-one scale replica tanks, and all of them, I believe, 99.99% of them are straight up just copies of the Girls and Panzer ones, because that's what led them to get into it. So without Girls and Panzer, there would not be as significant a Japanese contingent of tank dorks in the world as there are. So Girls and Panzer is fantastic.
So what you're saying is that the tanks you see at the Girls and Panzer events, where live play events, are actually one-to-one scale models.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I'm friends with a handful of them, and there's a few sort of like secret ones which have sort of like made their way into the country because they are replicas and not armored vehicles, so they could bypass those laws. And yeah, all of them are replicas. I do believe in private hands, tank wise, there is only one running tank, and that is a type. Is it a Type 95? Oh, completely lost track which one it is.
Right.
Pretty sure it's a Type 95 cargo, which is in private hands. That was the one that was at Bovington for a number of years. And it was recently purchased by a nonprofit organization, which, full disclosure, I am a member of. I'm sort of like their international, whatever you would call it. So yeah, so there's only one official tank in private hands in Japan that is running, with soon to be two, possibly three, also part of the same group. But all the others that you see are one-to-one scale replicas, which is just amazing. I love that community. It's great.
Wow, that's insane. So another question for you is, with you and Ted on opposite sides of the world, how did you two meet and to collaborate about to do a weekly podcast on tanks?
So that came about because of my trips to Canada. Again, full disclosure, I am a member of the Canadian Tank Museum. When I started visiting the Canadian Tank Museum, they were just called the Ontario, was it? Yeah, Ontario Military Museum. I've completely forgotten them now because, yeah, they are now officially the Canadian Tank Museum. But they started out as a ferret club, and they've been slowly sort of building up. And I went to the US just to visit some friends and sort of called a few of my contacts, including Nicholas Moran, the chieftain, and said, "Hey, what do you actually recommend I do while I'm, here?" And he suggested go to the Canadian Tank Museum and have a look at them. So I reached out, shot them an email, and just said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be in the area. I love getting involved with events and communities, and I'm going to be there for more than a couple of days. I'm actually going to be there for a week and a half. Do you guys want any help?" So they went and did some internet sleuthing. They found all of my YouTube videos, and one thing that they do really well is they have a collection of Gulf War vehicles that were all used in the Gulf War. The vast majority of them are CVRTs of all different shapes and sizes, and they get the crewmen who served on those vehicles, like number to number, and they get them to come over and drive or operate their own vehicles, but they're short on a few drivers. So they said, "Well, you've already proven you've got all of this, expert knowledge and know-how, and you've worked on," I think at the time I'd already worked on 3 CVRTs, both the diesel and petrol variations. So they went, "Hey, we need someone to sort of fill a gap. What do you think?"
And we can vouch for what a fast CVRT driver you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Firsthand. So
yeah, my ribs have never been the same again. But
so yeah, they saw all that sort of stuff, and they went, "Groovy, come along." They gave me a little trailer to sleep in and everything, they in the back of the museum section, because I went for Aquino, which is a 3-day event, very much akin to both Tank Fest and Osama Fest, which both of you are familiar with. So they knew I had experience with such events, and they were more than happy to open the door to me. And while I was there, not only did I become basically a member of the family, but I encountered Ted. And in subsequent years, we've grown that sort of rapport. And last year, he is working with a video game company called Armative Studios to build Steel Aces, which is a sort of World of Tanks / War Thunder sort of tie-in. And they said, "Hey, would you like to, help us out with that?" So we did a number of videos with them. And then on the side, Ted and I were sort of talking to a number of people at Aquino, and we said, "Why don't we do a podcast to bring this community together?" Because we just loved encountering so many different people from across the world. We had Of course, the British veterans there from the UK. We had Ted from the US. We had obviously all the Canadians, being that we were in Canada, me being an Australian. We even had a few Japanese reenactors pop over. We were just getting people left, right, and center. We said, well, how about we try and set something up so we can give all these people somewhere to go to get just a quick, news recap. And then if they really want to, we'll actually bring people on, because we found the Canadian Tank Museum, like I mentioned before, started out as a ferret club, just a ferret club, nothing grandiose, whatever. And just
that's the armored scout vehicle.
yeah, armored scout vehicle. Yeah, no, they
Not the small weasels that you put.
no, they had a small pet sanctuary, and they thought they're a little too fragile. Let's upgrade to the vehicles. So yes, the armored scout car, and they've just through the years, I think, got like 30, possibly even 40 years of just hard work, and now they have become a Goliath in the space of doing tank events. They have, I believe they just announced another event that they're doing every year. So I think they're up to 5 events per year, but Aquino still being the largest that they do. And when we go back, because again, it's a 3-day event, we all go back at the end of, day 1 and day 2 and even day 3. And there's copious amounts of alcohol involved. We all sit around fires, and once the general public is
John,
away.
it does sound like they have something that we can actually contribute to there, right? We don't have any of your mechanical or driving skills, but if they need somebody to come along and drink with them,
Drink beer, we're
all
we're the guys.
Absolutely. And because myself and now I've brought Peter along, and we've actually brought in a couple of other Australians just to get involved with the community. So Australians are quite loved over there.
They just don't know us yet, but yeah, that's okay.
No, they will though. I think we'll find a space for you. So yeah, we sort of all sitting around the campfire, getting quite drunk. And well, let's try and help other museums get to this stage, because there are Swedish museums, Swiss museums, Asian museums of all sorts everywhere who could absolutely get to this stage, but no one knows who they are because they don't have that the reach that you might get from a generalized Western audience. So that's what we're doing. We've already got a few in the pipeline, I believe. As of filming today, we haven't done the interview yet, but we're expecting to get the director of one of the Swedish museums onto the podcast, and basically just give them a platform to be like, hey, look, here's a community. What do you want to tell them? What do you have planned for, late 25, 26, and 27 in the future? And they can tell us exactly what they're doing, and people can make up their minds from there. So that's basically what we're doing. We're just a mouthpiece for the community.
I mean, that's great about Sweden, because I mean, as a country, they're probably outside of the great powers, the biggest tank builders of the smaller countries, and they've done a lot of interesting things. And certainly we get a lot of listeners from Sweden. They're probably just right behind Australia, US, UK, Canada. But I would love to see more stuff about what they're up to in Sweden.
Yeah, and that's all we're facilitating for everyone. So yeah, and of course we'd love to have like you on. You're part of the community, whether you like it or not. If you have an interest, passing or not, in tanks, then you're part of the Tank Dork community.
Yeah, we're definitely tank dorks, and we'd love to come on the show whenever you got space for us. But so you're on all the podcast platforms as Turret Monsters.
Yep. So our main hub is on Facebook. We do have a link tree, and we're on Spotify and Apple at the moment. We are sort of gearing up. We've got our own Patreon as well, if people want to sort of support. Basically, all the money for that comes back into the podcast, just allowing us to upgrade our equipment and the like. But yeah, we're on most major platforms.
I'll say that there is an RSS feed. I've managed to find it and put it into my queue, so I can get that directly without having to go through the billionaires.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
So, but no video yet for Turret Monsters, Lottie.
There are video on the Patreon. We're still, I think, as of filming with you guys, we're only up to episode 7, I believe. So,
Cool.
but we do one a week, so we're chugging along quite nicely. I don't
Great.
think 7's out yet because
No, you're only up to episode 4 at the moment.
yeah, because we put them out sort of like a week ahead.
Yeah,
kind of
I've got to say you're going hard for a weekly podcast about tanks. So I applaud you, and I hope you manage to be able to maintain the rage. I think when people talk to John and I about it, we'll say, well, our livers probably wouldn't like us doing a weekly podcast, so that's why we stick with monthly.
That's true. Yeah, we don't drink on our podcast, but no apparent reason. I think it's just because we're just so involved in talking about it, we forget to drink. But perhaps that is something we'll have to make an exception for when you guys.
I do like the description of the name of the website for Turret Monsters and how you described whenever you get into an armored vehicle and something bites you or you drop something and it goes down to the bottom of the tank and it'll never be found again. That was the Turret Monster taking a bite out of you. And the artwork you've got for it, did somebody draw that artwork for you?
Yeah. So that was a fantastic guy. He goes by Deco Noir online. He's very much into that like 90s, 1950s sort of horror art style that you find on like, Mars Attacks or any of those like groovy horror movies, B movie horror movie stylings. And I just love that and the idea of like Tara Monster. So the tank in that picture is actually a tank that we did a restoration for and gave it to him as a guide. And then we said, look, just put something cool coming out of it. And that became the Tara Monsters. I just love that sort of Deco Noir, which is why his name is Deco Noir. I love that styling. So
So I've got a drawing from my daughter of a tank, and I'm planning to send through to you guys because you made that call out the other week of saying send us a picture of what your kids draw as a tank, and I'll send hers through. So
absolutely, that would be marvelous.
I've always we've sort of fallen off it, but when we did our first few episodes, we all often talked about whether a tank was something that looked like a child would draw. Because some tanks and T-34 Sherman are very much covered by what children draw, and others aren't. So, how many have you had through, and what are they? What is there any winners?
At this stage, we haven't had a ton. We've actually had a lot from the Canadian Tank Museum community, all of their kids, and I think it's a little skewed towards actually being more professional because they are all kids of tank dorks. So
Right.
they've just sat down in front of a tank by the looks of it, and they've sketched their favorite. But most of them seem to really love that Sherman art style of just the body has to be significantly larger than the turret, but still proportional. It's interesting. So the Sherman seems to be the sort of go-to.
Now, a question for the future for you. No, and this is the future of tanks. So I was thinking about this as somebody who's worked on tanks and is talking about them. The weight of modern tanks is getting up there, the 80 plus ton range, especially the modern Western tanks. What do you see as a capability that how are they going to be able to drop that weight to something that is going to be manageable for the roads, the bridges, and logistics, and just the vehicles themselves? For the future of tanks, what are your thoughts on that?
To reduce the weight? Quite frankly, I don't think they will.
You don't think?
It's
going to keep piling on more and more stuff and make it heavier and heavier?
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit of a fallacy, but the majority of tanks will exert a ground pressure less than your family car. The damage that they do to roads comes about because of their steering with metal tracks, just having that sort of pivoting, grinding motion on particularly asphalt and dirt tracks. That's what destroys it. I'm sure you're familiar with Ozarmafest. All the damage that you see is in the corners. That's where all the damage is done. On, say, straight highway, driving over them, Obviously, you would have issues on a grander scale just because of the significant weight of the vehicles. That being said, if they are designed to hold a semi truck, they push up, and into hundreds of tons now, especially like, here in Australia. I don't think a tank is going to cause that much more damage in a straight line. On smaller roads, yeah, they're going to cause damage, but I don't think they're going to worry about that. It's as a mitigating factor. What they will probably do, I've seen it happen in Canada, is they are looking at experimental tracks, like the one piece or anywhere between 1 and 3 piece rubber track system.
The rubber band tracks, yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to the Canadian Tank Museum, they actually have it's a highly modified 113 platform, completely different engine, completely different driveline and all that, but it's basically just think of a limousine 113. The name escapes me at the moment, but it uses a hush track system. And that thing, I've driven it's fantastic. It's groovy. You can barely hear it. It's amazing. But then you have to think of the logistics of actually changing the track on something like that. Track bashing is a difficult task at the best of times, but when you have a track which is essentially a one and done, once that track is destroyed, that's it. You got to get another one, and there's no real recouping that sort of cost. So I don't believe they will be reducing the weight of tanks necessarily, but I do think they are going to have to take a good hard look at how they go in the off-road sort of department. And the Ukraine war has very much shown the world just how useless they can be in the hands of people who don't know how to operate them in rough terrain. When we did a lot of our work in Victoria, specifically at the South Gippsland Tank Adventures, we were operating daily in what we call Russian mud, which is essentially 3 meters deep of just clay. And a vehicle like Centurion does amazing. They have these really hard Grouser style metal track links, which have fallen out of favor worldwide, but can be found on vehicles like T72 to a kind of lesser extent. It's not as harsh. Something like that goes through easy peasy, provided you don't do anything dumb. But something like a Leopard actually struggles because of that sort of the rubber pads on them. They just slip and slide. So it's they just need to find exactly where they're going to be fighting. But again, Ukraine is a sort of, it's an interesting cultural phenomenon for tank conflicts. I think most people take the wrong ideas and concepts from the war, not realizing that most of the combatants there aren't necessarily doing things justifiably from a mechanical sympathy standpoint, if that makes sense.
No, that's an interesting insight. Lottie, have you got a favorite tank at this point in time?
Oh, well, why don't you just ask me what my favorite child is? Not that I have any, but
Yeah.
at this point, I am very much a lover of the Australian Cruiser series of vehicles.
Okay.
And that's probably for one very good, interesting reason, and that is we've actually taken delivery of one,
Oh.
of an AC3. So our current,
It's not Clive Palmer's, is it?
it is.
Oh.
But you didn't hear it from me. So it's one of those.
Are you going to get it running?
That is the idea. So we will be starting to give people an insight onto that. We've taken delivery of both the AC3 and the Centurion ARV. Now, part of the way that we took acquisition of it is because he's establishing a museum. Now,
I think make sure you get paid up front.
well, see, that's the thing. So he has paid for all the transport for these vehicles. However, the the contract that we have written up is we will be actually funding it through the community. And that is because whilst it is in our possession, which will be for a significant period of time, and even into its time at the museum, it will be fully publicly accessible. So even right now, if people are curious, they can reach out to us and come and look at these vehicles. We aren't barring anyone. These are for the public. So we have started, we're working with Far North Queensland Legacy, so a veterans program here in Australia, specifically Far North Queensland Legacy, because they are sort of broken up into their own little regional sections. So Far North Queensland Legacy is helping us out. We will be taking it to their events, and they'll be helping us make it a public event for everyone to attend. And through them and our own charity, which as of right now isn't up, but it will be called History Engage. People can donate specifically, not only to get bits and pieces from these particular vehicles. We've taken a leaf out of the Armor and Cav collection in the US in Fort Benning / Fort Moore, because they've changed their name, I think, 3 times at this point. So I do believe it's Fort Benning at the time of speaking, but that could change again. God knows where they are. But they do funded restorations through the public, and they recently did a Jagdpanther, and doing it through them, you can actually get a little vial of tank rust, as it were, which is amazing, just how much people want from these tanks. So that's what we're offering people, is a chance to come and see the vehicles. Their names will be engraved into a plaque inside the vehicle, so they'll have a direct hand in restoring these vehicles. We just really needed to find a way to get these inside. And as I'm sure you're aware, that they were sitting outside for a significant period of time. So it's a different way of doing things, but we've seen through Bovington and other museums that there seems to be a high degree of interest in getting public funding for tank restorations. So it's a little bit different to what we normally do. Normally, we just do straight up restorations for clientele, which the doors are still open. However, we are looking to move our operations overseas in a couple of years. So if you really want to get in now. We just take the money upfront from clients and do restorations, which you can see on my YouTube channel. So we don't hide anything.
So just out of intense interest on my part, with the Aussie Cruiser, are you planning to restore the original power pack, or just put something else in to drive it?
So at the current time, for those who don't know AC3 Thunderbolt, there are only 2 in existence. The other one is in the Australian War Memorial, which we are going to go and pillage some data from them. We've already talked to them. We're doing a lot of
when you come down to Canberra, give us a yell.
Absolutely.
Love to catch up with you. Maybe come out, and if we can get an invite out to or Centre with you.
Yeah, it's difficult. Let me tell you, I won't get too much into it, but the Australian War Memorial know me by my full name.
Look, off camera, I can give you some tips on dealing with them, but let's not record that.
Yeah, too easy. But yeah, so the AC3, we have obviously acquired it. It's in our workshop. It, as of speaking right now, we haven't done anything to it. It is missing its gun mantlet, which is of significant importance, and we'll get back to that really quickly. But it's running one of the 3 Cadillac engines. I highly, highly, highly doubt that we will get the original Cloverleaf set up for it, purely because getting 3 Cadillac V8s is actually a fairly easy exercise. However, there's 2 ways that we could do it. We have access to, if we wanted to purchase it, a Mark 1 transfer case. For those who don't know, The Mark 1s have one engine in the front and two engines in behind it, and they go to a central power driveline. But that is only exclusive to the Mark 1. The Mark 3s went to the cloverleaf, which is essentially one engine on top of two engines that go around a central crankcase. Getting one of those original crankcases is impossible. We've talked to the experts on this. It's impossible. So we probably won't do that. If we really wanted to sort of get like quote unquote kind of original, we could do it up as a single, like the AC1. What we're probably going to do is just replace it with something more modern, because in my experience, and this might sound, heathenous to tank purists, 90% of the population do not care, nor do they know when things are different. I have had the pleasure of working on 4 different Panzer Mark IVs in the world. Only one of those had the original driveline in it. No one could tell the difference. One of them had a turbo diesel in it, and people couldn't tell what was inside of it. So again, purists might, try and say something. People don't know. They honestly don't know. And it's going to be hidden. The engine deck on an AC 1 and 2 is a pretty hard thing to look inside of. So we'll get something more modern. It'll sound right, at least to the majority of the population. But everything else we want original, because the outside is original, the turret is original. We are looking to do an interesting bit of sort of thing. And again, we've sort of spoken to the majority of the people who are quote unquote experts in this field. Because it doesn't have a turret mantlet, and we have access to not one, but 2 25-pounders, we may...
Oh,
Go with the double dab.
We're going to go for the double dab, yeah. So I'll tell you what's wrong and what's right with it. What is right off the bat is we've got the 25-pounders. We don't have a mantlet, so we are going to have to create a mantlet, which is quite an expensive bit of kit, because we're basically going to have to copy the one at the Australian War Memorial, and we can modify it. We're going to have to scan it and then put it into a program. So that's something that's going to have to happen anyway. May as well do the double. It just looks infinitely cooler, and we know people are actually going to want to give money to a project like that because it's going to be a one-off.
So just for our audience who might not follow Australian cruisers as much as we do, there was historically a mock-up made with the double 25-pounders, so mostly to test out fitting 17-pounder, I think, but
Yes.
it existed, so it's not like you're just...
It existed. We're not pulling a world of tanks. It did exist. The only thing, technically speaking, wrong with the setup is it was used on a platform called the E1, which, surprisingly enough, still exists. It's a highly modified Mark 1 chassis. If you could call it, it's the original AC1, but everyone just calls it the E1, and it's still in the possession of John Belfield, who was the previous owner of this particular Mark 3. Now, we actually ran it by him, and my justification for it is if the purists really want it, we could at some point just get the Mark III the AC3 that we've got and the E1 that he's got, and we could just do a turret swap, and then you'd have an E1, which is perfectly reasonable. We can do a lot of swapping around. So we're not doing anything that can't be undone. And it's just so cool. Like, come on, 220-pounders in an AC3 is just, it's amazing. And I even ran it by, I won't put words in his mouth, but the chieftain did say it was a cool idea. So, it's...
Look, he's not the sole arbiter of cool in the world of tanks. I mean, he's close to it, but he's not the only one.
Exactly. And this is a fundraising project. So what the community says, the community does. And unless Like, I'm happy to do a poll. Like, if everyone wants me to just do a global poll, I'll do it. That's not a problem. But I can guarantee 80% of the population is going to be like, duh, put the 225s in. For the quick recap reason why 225-pounders were inside of an AC3 turret, it's the correct turret. We've got the correct turret. We're not doing any, fibbing with that. Is because they were trying to gear up for the AC4 prototype, which has the 17-pounder in it. At that period, they didn't know if they shoved a 17-pounder in, would the turret ring of an AC3 turret actually handle the recoil, because that's what they're going to shove the 17-pounder into. So before they went to all the engineering of putting a 17-pounder inside a turret, which is a significant challenge, but well, let's just shove 225-pounders in, and the math works out to be something along the lines of it has the same recoil potential of 1.5 17-pounders. So if you can discharge 225-pounders and it doesn't blow up or blow the turret ring off, you're right as rain. So they did it. That's the quick, nitty-gritty story behind that. So it has historical precedent, and that is what we are gearing up to do. This AC3 has its original gearbox, so it's got its original driveline. The only thing that is, I can almost guarantee won't be original, is the engine, which again, I'm going to sound heathenist, but who cares?
Look, I think there is an argument for actually hearing the sound of the original engine if it's possible, but it's not worth not getting the tank running, if it needs a different engine, and particularly a more modern engine that isn't going to break down every 5 minutes.
Exactly. And it's not one of these cases where it's like trying to, hunt down a Maybach engine, which is, just the cost of money. This is a specially designed 3-to-1 transfer case that is designed to hold 3 Cadillac V8s. That is, if someone, again, I'll throw it out to the community, if they want to fund, I'm sure the designs are out there. It's been created once. This is always what I fall back onto when it comes to tank restorations. It's been done before in the past, which means it can be done again. You just need to find either the time, resources, or all of the above to do it again. So we could make a 1-to-1 full recreation of an AC3 down to the rivet and nut and bolt. It comes down to the resources, time, and how much money people are willing to throw at it. So again, I put it out to the community. If they want to fund a genuine engineering recreation of a transfer case, we'll do it. It's not outside the realms of possibility.
Fair enough. Okay, and so if people want to get involved, Turret Monsters on Facebook is the best place to start?
Yep, Turret Monsters on Facebook. I am also going to be doing, obviously, the majority of the filming, because this is all going to be filmed, will be on my YouTube, and that is both for the AC3 and the Centurion ARV that we have in our workshop, among other things. But yeah, so we'll probably be giving like weekly updates on the actual progress charity-wise on the podcast, because that is news for the tank community. But if you want to see in-person physical updates, go check out my YouTube channel. So there's all sorts
tank
of
whisperer for those who don't,
yes.
who haven't caught it before.
So yeah, and
Brilliant.
The other one is the Centurion ARV, which has significant history within the Australian tank community. So we can talk about that later.
Fantastic. All right, Lottie, we're going to have to let you go for now, but we really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us all about what you've been up to, and we really wish you all the best, and look forward to many more episodes of Turret Monsters and your YouTube channel.
Too easy. Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on, and of course, you guys are always welcome onto our podcast.
Hey, so I hope you guys enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed that interview with Lottie. And one thing I was going to say for her podcast is great listen, Turret Monsters. They really need an intro and outro music because it just really tees up who you're going to be listening to. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it really helps tee up.
You just need to spend 15 years of your life covering the local music scene.
I mean, when
we are eternally grateful to Luke McGrath from Baby Freeze, who is the musician responsible for our theme music, and it totally fools people that we're much more professional than we are. So,
all right. And for those who don't know, the Clive Palmer we talk about during that interview is an Australian mining billionaire who really, really wants to be Donald Trump, but doesn't have the presence, charisma, or the right political environment to achieve it. Even though he's willing to throw $80 to $100 million trying to get himself and his lackeys elected and failing, he's also a very litigious person, and tries to welch out of paying his workers.
So very like Donald Trump in many ways.
But as we've mentioned in previous episode, he does own one of the 6 last Sentinel tanks. So.
Yep. Now, before I comment on that, I just want to say hello, Tasman. Thank you for joining the show. It's always great when you're with us. Biddy 1969's joined us from Portland, and Malky 69 is coming from a cold, wet, and windy Scotland.
Yeah, great to see you all. Joining us.
It is 34 degrees and incredibly bright and dry in Canberra today.
Yep.
And
there are lots of bushfire warnings around Australia today, so hopefully we're not going to burn the country down again.
It's a little uncomfortable in the pod room down here, but
as long as we don't have our Russian tank helmets on, it's actually okay.
And the beer is cold.
The beer is cold and flowing.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Clive Palmer, who is the owner of Lottie's Sentinel Australian Cruiser, I do want to add that long ago, when Rob and I ran a very different local news website, Clive Palmer brought a huge amount of advertising dollars from us. And when the ad manager brought it to me, I did say, make sure they pay up front. And the Palmer people took that on board and gave us the money up front. So in terms of doing business with them, you can do business with Clive Palmer, but you got to know who he is and what he does and get the money up front. And all that said, the man's a coal mining billionaire and deserves nothing but scorn for his efforts to influence public policy to make himself just a little bit fatter while destroying the preconditions for civilization. And on that note, Rob, it's time to thank the patrons, which
our
means
wonderful patrons.
I need to remember which way to go. There we go. There's our patrons. So in our top tier, the Artificer tier, who get the interview early and the ad-free video and audio of the show, we have Brian Jenkins, Per, Cornelius Weber, Chris Pezet, Anton Gorbanov, Maxi Misk, Chicago John, Hans Vormhat, Johnny Oot, Monty, and Jacob Caban, and a couple of guys who want to give us money but don't want their names read out.
Well, we thank you anyway.
Yes, indeed. And in the Apprentice tier, who also get the ad-free audio and video of the show, we have David Mulvaney, Scotch 12, Floaty Burb, Steve Matthews, Jamie Stokes, Gihook, Jay Beckman Strauss, Hans Wang, Henry Hemerd, Dan Sepienza, Christoph Keller, Tony L, Elliot Spicer, Russell Phillips, Red Rum X, Callum, Steve Broomfield, James Van Dyke, The Rain Man, and Joe M. All right, Rob, you take the reins for a bit.
All right. Patrons and Apple Bastardry, keep calm and carry on, but use a web browser to join if you're so inclined, and check out the new website at https://totallytanked.net. Something rather.
Just totallytanked.net.
Totallytanked.net. I don't know. You don't make
simple.
me do. Why would you make me do this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
All
right. We say beer review, but I don't think we're ready for that because
we have half beer yet.
Yes. So let's move on. We'll move the beer review to later in the show.
We'll pull it out once we finish these. It's a fun and exciting one. You'll never guess which beer. So we've already had a
Can anyone guess what beer Rob's got?
We've already had a Kingfisher to go with the Vickers MBT. So what beer would also go with it? Hey,
now, I want to say
in fact, there's 2 beers to go with it.
The sanctity of the beer review is so strong that when our top tier patron Cornelius Weber's wife died and he said, "Can you tell me what the beer is so I can drink it along with you guys for the show?" I had to say, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Rob won't tell me." So
I would have for Cornelius if he'd said that. All right.
I guess you just asked the wrong person. I was just like, I've got no influence over Rob on this stuff. Anywho, all right.
All right, at the end of the
So
year...
Raghav reckons it's Carling, and I really hope it isn't, because, I mean...
No, we did tennis the other week. But anyway, at the end of each year, we like to share the fun that comes up to us in the mailbag. So here is what has been on people's minds this year. All right.
So our episode on the Renault FT, John Thomas Scholar said, I was planning on buying a t-shirt, but you all said Redbubble cut your profits off, so now I wait until I can go to a tank festival. Probably going to be in Oshawa until I buy one so I can support you gents properly. Appreciate the sentiment. Redbubble and us have made peace, so do feel free to get us the shirts.
We'd much rather you have the shirts and
wear them proudly. Don't just buy it to have it. Buy it to wear, because we it's repping the brand.
Wear it to the pub. Wear especially the ones saying probably the second bestest podcast in the Australian language. That gets people talking.
Yeah. Or, of course, Rob's Universal Carrier shirt that gets him in fights with random barmen.
It wasn't a fight. It was a comment.
Mm-hmm. So our episode on the M103, The Last American Heavy, Attack Chalk 16 wrote, nice podcast, can't disagree. You should get a War Thunder sponsorship. This was a joke, for the love of God. Do not. Fair enough. Our episode on T62, Thomas Scholler again, saying, I heard Belgium mentioned. Sounds like a Belgian episode, maybe covering all of their armoured fighting vehicles, since most are copy and paste from other countries, and a beer review for a Belgian triple are in order. I would love to do a Belgian triple. That would be great.
I'm sure we've done one in one of the early episodes, but I'm sure I've brought something in from Belgium and said, look, it was leopard. It was what they do. Anyway,
he said, can't believe I'm running out of podcasts. Thank you all so much. I mean, there's no shortage of podcasts in the world, although we will not vouch to the quality of all of them.
Especially ours.
Yeah. Okay, still on the M103, Brighton Thoreau commented, hey, yo, been watching you guys for about 3 years. Big time fan. Keep up the good work. Smiley face. Thank you. That's the sort of comment we like to see. The Soviet BT, Stalin's Hot Rods, Jeffrey Abrahamsa. Jeffrey Abrahamsa says, I tuned out at the Russians paying podcast to spout propaganda, CIA talking point. If they kept this podcast politically neutral as possible, rather than being useful idiots, they may find a larger audience. Well, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, and we're idiots. But
I'd much rather be a politically useful idiot than anything else. All right, I don't need. We're here to hang out, drink beer, and talk tanks. That's what we do.
Some podcasters get paid by the Russians to spout their talking points.
Now, if we were getting 100,000...
We would take the Russian money, but we would let you know it was paid advertising, all right? That's the important thing.
I get in so much trouble. I think we'd both get in so much trouble.
Yeah, we probably actually wouldn't, given that they're our employers. But yeah. So Tasman's just saying, for those who want to drive a Vickers MBT in a game, World of Tanks was a big letdown, but War Thunder does have an Indian Mark 1 and in the UK Tree A Mark 3.
Oh, nice.
There you go. But you have to deal with Gaijin's interface. Anyway, moving on. Soviet BTs, Stalin's Hot Rods. Noah Pagano says, for the record, the Bolsheviks didn't overthrow the Tsar, and the Russian Civil War was a lot more complicated than you suggest. The Tsar was overthrown in a separate revolution which led to the formation of the semi-democratic Kerensky Republic. The Bolsheviks then overthrew that republic, leading to the Civil War with various anti-communist white Russian groups as well as various independence groups trying to form their own states. Look, you are correct.
You are correct. Right? We're not going to disagree with you.
We were compressing the history to suit a podcast about tanks, not Russian communist history.
I did actually do a course on...
Look, I've done a lot of courses on that as well, and I agree with him, but I don't think our contraction was wrong in the terms
I don't say I did very well in the course, though. I did one, though.
All right. On our Crusader episode, Abe said, love the podcast, but please keep the politics out.
Tanks are always political.
Tanks are always political.
Another T-shirt.
If you choose, you can choose, and lots of people do, to talk about tanks without talking about politics. We choose to include the politics, and people can disagree with us. They are welcome to.
It's not like our opinions actually matter, but we're going to throw them out there anyway because, hey, Why? We like to talk about things.
But politics enshroud tanks. Politics are why they are created. Politics are why they are used. Politics are how they are used. And we think that talking about tanks without trying to address the politics.
I'm going to take the next couple of ones so you can drink your beer,
Okay.
so that
you can get up.
so we can get to our beer review. All right. Silence Hot Rods. Griffin said 8 months ago the German Whistle platform would be a nice episode. Well, I would like to include the German Whistle because
I think we'll do a whistle at some point.
They're a great little bloody tank. All right. Bradley, a real tank killer. Da Supreme Overlord. Said
The Supreme Overlord Roller of One.
Oh, sorry, Roller of One. I'm sorry. I thought that was part of the... anyway, can you someday make an episode, no pressure or anything, but this would be kind of funny, where you meme on the worst tanks in history. It's history, but comedy all at once. I think we can definitely do something like that. Bob Semple, what else we come up? Right, Bradley, a real tank killer from Victor Axelson. Finally, something about the Bradley not based on the historical documentary Pentagon Wars. Yes, well, we did reference Pentagon Wars quite a lot because...
But we didn't base it on it because we know it was wrong.
No.
It was funny, but it was wrong.
I still remember watching it so many years ago. It would have been in the 90s I watched it, and I found it so... I mean, Carrie Elways, who doesn't love him? Right?
Legolas. Yeah.
No, what? Legolas? No.
Carrie Elways.
No.
Oh, it's Orlando Bloom.
Yes. No, he was buddy Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah, sorry.
Dread Pirate Roberts.
But Carrie always does look a lot like Orlando Bloom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's an older, young Carrie. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to go top and we're going to go long enough for this.
Let's keep going.
Bradley, Chase Durand, by far the dumbest episode. Talk about tanks, not politics, not why we are here. Well,
Chase, jog on. Just jog on. We're the tank podcast that talks about politics. If you don't like it...
And beer.
If you don't like it, we're not making you listen to it, man. Just
some people might notice that this is going to be a long episode and we're going to be drinking more and more beer, so we're probably going to be getting more and more drunk. Anyway, Bradley, again, Maxwell the Cat. Firstly, I like your podcast very much and gave 5 stars. Well done. Well done. It should be 7, but
if you haven't given us 5 stars yet, get on whatever platform you're on and give us those stars, you dickheads. Come on, just give us the stars.
So my suggestion, I would love to hear an episode about the IS-3, and maybe you guys can make it also the IS-4. I came to this idea because I play a tank game called War Thunder, and in the IS-3 and 4 are pretty scary, so much armor. Excuse my writing, it's in German. Excuse my pronunciation. Autocorrecture. Have a nice day, and I would love to hear my suggestions soon. Don't have to, of course.
We will definitely be doing the IS-3 at some point. But,
have we done the IS-3?
No, we've done the 2. But
there we go. So after 77 episodes, I forget what we've done, which is why we sometimes have to go back and do them again. All right, back to the Bradley. Liam said, Mum, Dad, stop fighting.
We were bickering more than we liked in that period, and I think we've dialed back the bickering. So, hopefully...
I don't believe you. You're wrong. Yeah, right, Chiha, the Sword of the Empire. Fennec said, I was having a bad day till I saw the notification that you had uploaded. Thank you, Fennec. That's what we love to hear. All right, Soviet BTs, Stalin's Hot Rods, Bago Bones, 9 says, this show really shows its bias, calling the Spanish socialists the more moral side when the Civil War was started by them executing nationalists and rigging the government, and they've executed and murdered just as many people as the nationalists. But just because the show has a heavy left leaning, there's somehow the morally correct side. God forbid we get unbiased information about tanks on the show. It'll never happen if only they were actually open about their bias. I think we've been very open about it.
That's the thing. He's like, I can see your bias, and if only you were open about your bias, it's like, well, you can see it because we are
very biased, right? Fascists bad, communists bad. People doing things.
People who fight fascists, good.
Yeah.
Yes. So right. Dude, like I keep saying, there's a lot of places where people talk about tanks. If you don't like us, that's okay.
Right. We'd love to engage anybody who wants to talk about tanks. Anyway, because tanks are always political. All right.
A couple of comments coming in here.
Oh, good.
Raghouse saying there's actually a political science term called technopolitical, as in how the political ideology of said system promotes its technological design, VIP, part of real-world history, indeed. Tasman says Battle Lines Telegraph does a good podcast on that messed up Ajax. I don't know why the Brits piss it off and get in the CV90 club. We'll be there.
All right, that's yet to come. We're getting there, all right?
Hans says you can still listen to someone if you don't agree with their politics. Who knows, they may even sway your opinions or you theirs. Malky's saying, I like you get to express your opinion. I might not always agree with you. I'm happy to know what the far side of the world thinks. Yeah, it's just other people's stuff.
Now, we're gonna stop here, and I'm gonna show you, boys and girls, what we have.
The review beers.
The review beer. And you know what? While the Kingfisher, drunk in India, the most drunk beer in Nigeria. Do you know what it is, John?
I mean, I can see what's in your hand.
It's Guinness, boys and girls. Guinness is the most drunk beer in Nigeria.
They do brew it in Nigeria, though. So
it is. That's what they like. They like the flavour of Guinness. So the first of today's beer review beers.
We've got more.
Yes.
I can hear a widget in this, Rob.
It's got a widget in it.
Now, you understand that a widget beer is a very complicated thing to pour because they can explode in weird ways.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen and aim it away from your face.
Because we have a lot of computer gear.
Aim it away from your face.
Ah! So for those who don't know what a widget beer is, it's a capsule full of nitrogen is under pressure in the can. And when you open the can, it comes out of pressure and releases the nitrogen, which gives you a very fine head. Or it's a completely unnatural beer. But hang on. Yeah, and as Alan says, you got to pour it fast. And it's like, yeah, you really got to pour it fast. Anyway, we have survived. And I mean, it has given us a beautiful head that is still creaming out there.
It is icily cold and delicious for a hot day in Canberra here.
And Guinness, of course, is traditionally thought of as an Irish beer, but the Irish are never going to give us a tank to talk about. So well done, Rob. That's some thinking outside the box.
Nigeria,
there.
boys and girls, they have the Mark III. They have the Vickers MBT, and it's the most drunk beer in Nigeria. It's in fact, Nigeria is where they drink the most Guinness.
Yep.
All right.
Now look
because
at
of
that is a beautiful beer with a very dense head. Now, as a beer maker, I despise nitrogenated beers on a level because it's just not something that's created in the fermenting process. But it makes for a tight head and a.
So 160 million people in Nigeria.
We all like a tight head.
It's like the size of New South Wales. It's 160 million people in that area, and they drink the most. As we said before, they're the fourth largest English-speaking country in the world, and they drink the most Guinness in the world. So there you go.
I'm going to say, as a stout,
as a tall boy,
it's lighter. It's lighter than I was actually expecting because I've drunk a lot of non-Guinness stouts in the last few years.
They have a lot more flavour. I've always found that Guinness doesn't have as much flavour.
It's almost heading to watery territory for stouts.
I think I've said that before.
But it's a big black beer, and if you got to be ready for that if you haven't drunk black beer before. So it's heavy, it's roasted. It's basically like beer coffee.
Yes. Yeah. But it's not as strong as many other stouts we've had before. So.
Jonas has noted it's 4.2 ABV and is a dark amber. And looking at the light coming through it, I'd actually agree that is a dark amber. It's almost a red ale. Yeah.
4.2. It says it's draft stout. There you go. But we do have another beer after we finish this one.
Okay.
So,
but right now, Rob, you've got some more comments to read.
All right, Tiger 2, the Gotterdammerang. Tobias says, World War II Germany designing the Sturm Tiger. Hans, we need... This is a little story that he's put together. Hans, we need a better transmission. A 380 millimeter naval rocket launcher. 9, better transmission. 250 millimeters of armor. 9, better transmission. 12 missiles. 9, better transmission. More people. Yeah, Hans. Yeah, more people. So that was lovely, that story. I think it encapsulated the Sturm Tiger and everything else right there.
So on the Matilda episode, who is this? Anyway, someone with a bunch of numbers in the username. The absolute Chads are back. Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Thank you,
are
man.
so young.
So the Supreme Overload roller of 1 on the Matilda said, "This is awesome stuff. I'd love to see what an M1 or even M2 Abrams episode would be like. That would be amazing. In addition, a dedicated Bob Semple episode would be perfect. I don't think we can do a whole episode on the Bob Semple,
No, I'm
but
pretty sure I've mentioned the Bob Semple and
we did it in the Australian tank stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next. Whatever it is, I know it will be simultaneously epic, hilarious, and enjoyable to listen to."
Thank you.
And that's the sort of comment we like.
That's what we're going for. Fun, beery. Soviet BTs, Stalin's Hot Rods, Liam, the Leviathan Dreadnought. I know what you were talking about in the BT rocket artillery. And to answer your question, the tank torpedo had a rocket motor installed, effectively making a giant unguided rocket. That's makes sense.
Good to know.
Yeah. Otherwise, what's a torpedo going through the air?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Now, our T90 episode is a long time ago, but this comment came in 5 months ago from someone called JS. "Great episode, lads. Appreciate your attention to listeners that might be tuning in years later," which is why we always start the show by saying the date of recording. Because there are times when what we thought and was the best we knew has been superseded by later events and information.
Just like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
All right, Bradley, Real Tank Killer. Kane 2116, love the podcast. P.S. I love to hop on World of Tanks with you guys. We're not really doing that these days. I tried to drag him into bloody...
I'm just not very good at it. I'm quite good at ESO, but yeah, anyway.
Elder Scrolls Online is what we've been anyway. IS-2 Big Cat Safari vehicle. Paulus J. If I remember correctly, T-34 crews sometimes stuck a bucket on the end of the barrel to make it look like an IS-2 to scare the Germans. That's hilarious.
That's right. It's a good insight. Thank you for that. All right. When Type 99, the Red Wave, Matt commented, "I wish you guys wouldn't talk over each other and be so adversarial.
I can't believe you'd say that.
It would make for a much easier listen." Look, that was the period when we were probably a little too fighty, and like I said, I've been trying to dial it down. Rob's still a dickhead, but you know we're doing our best. All right, the mouse episode, Rob. What do we got here?
Jan Lang, Fail Big, says 1800. Love the mentioning of the 2 best gods in the Warhammer 40k world. Orcs would prove best vehicle for the boys. Wow, that's talking about Mork and Gork. The fight, sneaky cunning one and the cunning sneaky one. Yes, I'm all about the orcs. It's the only way to go.
So the mouse episode, Rogue Danners said, "Love the pod. Great that you mentioned Girls and Panzer. My 2 cents, it would have been better for the Nazis to save the steel time and fuel effort on the mouse and various super heavies and get Stugs instead. It wouldn't have won them the war, but it would have made it last a wee bit longer." Which is kind of like, what's the point there?
No.
So for that reason, I'm glad they had a go at the mouse. I'd also say
well said.
But the entire German naval effort consumed colossally greater resources for less results.
The main thing is validating my efforts to maintain link to Girls and Panzer, and Lottie even said her links to it, and it's a case of, this is a world where people should listen to. Girls and Panzer has a place within the tank podcasting environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the mouse episode, someone called Iron Maiden fan number 666, which is awesome, said, "Congratulations, Hans, we made it to the other end of the factory floor." So we're making more Hans jokes there, which is great. Malky says, this is a comment from the live feed. "Oh, I so want a beer, but it's only 6:10 and the house sergeant major, the wife, will not be happy when she gets up." Yeah, sorry, man. we can't help with that. We're trying to service the whole world here, which is why 3 p.m. on a Saturday
We're drinking for everybody, all right? We're drinking for everybody. All right, on the mouse episode, Taryn Brown says, "Probably my favourite podcast." That's lovely. Thank you, Taryn Brown.
Yep.
M10 Wolverine, Panzer Hunter, Kat-san, says, "Girls and Panzer has a lot of fan service. It's just that their fan service is centered entirely around the tanks themselves." Well said. Like that as a statement.
Would it have worked as Boys in Panzer, though? Probably not.
No. Nobody like that. It sounds like...
So girls in miniskirts are an important part of the show.
School skirts. They're not mini...
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
All right, T90, the Beast from the East, from Frankie 3 months ago. "Interesting listening to this in 2025. after realizing just how much propaganda we were fed about the Ukraine conflict and just how bad Western weapons perform against their Russian counterparts. Now over 200 T-90s are being produced a year. Yeah, I think 200 might actually be accurate, but 200 isn't actually enough. But compared to their thousands of losses, yeah.
No, it's rolling out the T-62s though. I mean,
Yeah.
Why not?
Well,
and for the role that they're playing them in. Anyway, all right. On the Intent episode, Panzer Hunter Samuel Colt says about the episode, controversial opinion, the M10 is one of the best looking tanks of the American from World War II.
Yeah, we said that at the time. It's it looks sexy as hell.
I always think, what's the other? Not the M36.
The Hellcat.
Hellcat.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. I think it's faster and sleeker and painted red. All right, Centurion Revisited, tougher than the rest. Evan Shujania, can we please have an episode about the Conqueror, my beloved? I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah,
just like we did the 103 episode for the American heavies, we'll get to
We'll probably do Conqueror, but there's just not a lot to say about it.
But no, we'll do
They built it and they said this is a bad idea because they'd realised the Russians weren't going heavier and heavier. The Russians had come back to medium tanks and the T-55. But
I mean, we'll do the British heavy Cold War tanks at some stage and roll them all up together. All right, Centurion Revisited, tougher than the rest. Hang on, is that from...
I think his name is M1A2 SEPV3.
Right, Abrams.
Yeah.
It's so peak, just exquisite. Martyr episode when? Last month?
Well, the Panzer II episode covered a lot of Martyr stuff, but yeah.
Well, unless you want to go into the Martyr 3, nobody does. Centurion episode, Terry says, would you guys do the T-55 again, please? Look.
I think T-55 is an obvious candidate for a revisited episode.
Yeah, I mean, we covered a lot of stuff in that.
We'd probably want to reuse the interview from that one. It was the first time we'd done an interview in the show, and
for somebody who's actually driving in a wartime situation.
For God's sake, a young American who'd gone and driven a stolen T-55 around Syria.
Unless we can find another young American who's stolen
who's willing to be on camera. Yeah.
All right, Panzer IIs.
If you are the guy we interviewed for that and you're willing to be on camera now, because that some time's passed. Get in touch. We'd do that again. But yeah.
Love to. All right. Panzer II. Liam says, the Kino Tank Weekend is unlike any other show I've seen. The organisers have fly over 30-plus Gulf War veterans from the UK to take part in reenactments. They actually operate the original vehicles that they served in the Gulf War. It's quite a surreal experience listening to their stories. I went out drinking with them one night. It was one of the most memorable experiences I've had to date. If you're into tanks, this show is an absolute must. Thank you for that. Look,
I think he means a Kino.
No, the last bit's obviously directed at us.
Anyway, that's fine.
All right, but you put out a post on Facebook this morning about the Kino getting more tanks from private collection.
They've had a huge donation. Yeah,
so another bunch of CBRTs heading towards them. And so they're getting another 30 tanks, including CBRTs, Leopard, T-54.
Chieftain, I think, but yeah.
And a Chieftain, so that's all going their way. And stuff.
All right, so we're moving into the Apple podcast reviews, and we've had a couple of years with no reviews on Apple Podcasts, and partly because we don't get a lot of listeners from there; they're mostly on Spotify. But we had a bunch this year, so here we go. Lego Tank Enthusiast said, "You guys are so informative and in depth with your work. I really respect the work you put into it, and I hope you can continue doing this. Also, can you do a modern Polish tank? Much appreciated." Yes. Modern Polish tanks are definitely something we're going to look at some point in the future.
Modern Polish tanks?
Like the Twardy and...
oh, God.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the K2 and the...
Yeah.
There you go. And right.
So some guy called Declonus said, perfect series to binge on my commute. Great informative podcast that I found a few weeks ago. I've listened to over half your episodes already. That's a lot of listening to us in a couple of weeks. But
I hope we haven't made your brain dribble out of your ears.
Yeah. And it's a blast. The hosts are funny, and even if they ramble a bit occasionally,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I would say often, but I started skipping beer reviews, but they're actually pretty fun.
So do we think so as well.
All right. Some guy called Tank Enthusiast said, I like the podcast. I like the tank. I like the humor. I like the detail in the tanks. But there is one thing that, in my opinion, could be replaced, the politics talk. Now, I like current events and I like listening to the news and politics, but in my opinion, unless it's politics related to the tank's history, they don't deserve to be in a military podcast. But other than that, I love it. And we would say all of the politics we talk about are entirely related to the tanks. And we've said this before. But so Tasman's also coming in the chat saying Poland's have some good prototypes like the PLO-1, which I think is the Twardy, and Anders, but that is about it. They are I think the operators of one of the world's biggest tank fleets now, though. So
diverse tank fleets as well.
Yep. Now, we've had some YouTube comments of note lately, so let's talk about those. In the M103, Asimo9740 said, who does John blame for Ukraine losing 20% of its territory? Everyone else except Russia. Never mentions Russia. Always the evil West. And to that I say, bullshit, buddy.
Russia, Putin bad.
Putin bad. Russia the aggressors. Absolutely agree. Have said so at length. Having said that, Western influence in Ukraine has put them in a horrific situation where the West has not backed them up for the fight we've gotten them into. And, that is not Russia's fault, but it's definitely Russia's fault for invading them. And I'm definitely on record saying Russia is bad on that. So anyway, stick that up your ass.
All right, Sun King 968 talking about the Crusader. I'm thrilled and grateful to see so much attention to the Crusader, but disappointed that in parts the assessment was just as unbalanced and dismissive as other reviews. Case in point, the M3 Grant is blindly praised as totally superior to the Crusader, but the Crusader 3 had a more powerful anti-tank gun. Also note the 75 on the Grant was also awkwardly placed, was faster. The Crusader was faster, had much longer range, and had a much lower silhouette, so it was probably considerably harder to hit than the Grant, which was the most ludicrously high, please shoot me body. So although the Grant was better in some areas, the fact that the Crusader had numerous important design elements which were actually superior and certainly disproves the idea that the Grant was universally better.
I want to talk to this because
I hadn't seen this one before, but yeah that's just hilarious.
We have spoken at length of all the many ways in which the Grant was terrible. We have argued with Grant fans at length. The point is, Grant, with all its horrible failings, was still so much better than Crusader.
It could go places, not break down. It didn't. Yeah. And in the words of David Willey, his case of, it didn't break down for the fun of it, or whatever was the case.
Yeah, but also he's talking about Crusader when it got the 6-pounder, which required the commander to load the gun while facing backwards. That is not a viable, successful, useful tank design.
Yes.
It was so bad, and the M3 was so appallingly bad that Australia, having bought 1,000 of them, having paid for 1,000 of them, refused to deploy them in World War II and instead put old Matildas into use. And the Matilda, it was a great tank in 1940, but to be using them in 1945, that indicates that in the tier of things, the Grant is not great and the Crusader is worse.
All right.
Oh, dear. Here we go.
BTs, the Stalin's Hot Rods, captivate them. The very best tractor podcast in the game right now.
Yes, we'll take that.
Yeah.
All tanks are tractors at heart.
Yes.
So the Valentine episode, Timothy Wright said, it was a light tank to the Russians in terms of bridge and road limitations, and you are probably correct there. And that's part of what made the Valentine so great. Was it was a useful tank package in a very light.
It could go where they needed it to go and didn't need any special requirements. All right, Panzer II from Thomas Rude 524. What a horrible take on this, as if they had knocked out the RAF and not bombed. Actually, only if you could do this one, John, because this is yours.
Okay, Thomas Rude's comment was, what a horrible take on this. If they had knocked out the RAF and not bombed London, then the Royal Navy would be helpless to stop them. Plus, they could starve out the British at that point, not to mention they only needed a small beachhead at first. Now, I I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. I took this comment and I replied, if. Which, for those who aren't unaware of the history of this phrase, it's called the laconic if, which is a reference to ancient Sparta, where Philip of Macedonia wrote a letter to the Spartans saying, if I bring my army into your country, I will destroy you. And the Spartans just wrote a letter back saying, if. and then Philip II did bring his army in and he did destroy them. But the if is still cool. And also just say, oh, you know, if the Germans had just done this one other thing, they would have won World War II. He's completely ignoring the whole history of the war and being incredibly stupid. So possibly this is my favourite comment ever, as it shows how hilariously detached from reality some people can be and still manage to type comments online. But then, Rob, we got a better comment this morning. Just this morning. So this came from the family of Gordon Bennett, the Australian general who abandoned his troops at Singapore. So Philippa Bennett commented, "Wow, you lack so much knowledge about my great uncle, General Gordon Bennett."
Now, I've got to say, thank you, Philippa, for the comment. And say, yes, we do. We lack a lot of knowledge about him. But it's a case of we do know what actually happened.
We do know that a royal commission said he abandoned his troops.
Now, the comment Gordon Bennett, as used in Red Dwarf and other British sitcoms throughout the ages, is not actually directed at him.
Well, it wasn't initially directed at him because the first attestation is 1937.
Yeah,
but its growth in popularity might well be a conflation of those things.
I think the Gordon Bennett, who was a US money person in the 1890s and doing horrible things, and then basically becoming the epitaph of Gordon Bennett. How did that happen? Is not directed at him, but it still sits on my mind. And my main idea of it is from Red Dwarf when Holly says Gordon Bennett about something or other.
Now, I just want to quickly note that we are now at 2 minutes 25 and well on track to make the Vickers MBT the longest episode we've ever done. So I hope everyone's enjoying this. We see we've got a bunch of people still on the line, so that's great.
All right, we have another beer.
Oh, Jesus, you've been drinking faster than me. I'm in trouble now.
And John, you'll be happy to know the new beer is a heavy. It's the Kingfisher Strong, 8%.
Yeah, because after this episode, Rob goes home, and then I have to, you know, in incredible inebriation, make the magic happen so everyone can enjoy these afterwards. But yeah,
the Kingfisher Strong.
Kingfisher Strong.
All right. So
I don't think we're going to like this, but I will reserve my judgment.
I've had it at the Multicultural Festival a number of times.
Well, when you got beer and men on a stick and it's 50 degrees outside, it's that all seems great.
So it's a tall boy. Kingfisher Strong.
For everyone who's not in Canberra, we have this thing called the Multicultural Festival, which is also known as Beer and Meat on a Stick Day.
That's beautiful.
Or,
That's beautiful.
Or some people, not me, call it Wogs and Clogs.
What?
Yeah, well, because you got
that's racist.
Racist, yes. Yeah.
Beer and Meat on a Stick Day. Are we focus on the cultural program?
Yeah. So anyway, every multicultural community in the city of Canberra has a stall and a bunch of restaurants. So there's a whole bunch of issues there, but and they sell they run their barbecues of their local culture, and so you buy your meat on a stick, and they sell you a beer of whatever beer that is brewed in the country.
I did try and get some Tusker beer, which is the
lovely,
which is from Kenya for the Kenyan versions of the Vickers MBT. But unfortunately, even though I now have relations who are part of the Kenyan community of Canberra. They're all teetotalers, so they couldn't actually tell me where to get Tusker beer. So, but yes, it is a very nice beer.
So now let's talk about what's happening in the world. So we were excited, Rob. We got news that Ajax was accepted into service.
Mate, everybody loves the Ajax. It works so well.
So Ajax is going great. But then just 2 weeks later, we were saddened by the news that the Ajax had to be removed from service.
Has anybody told Maximus, and how's he taking it?
I haven't seen Maximus's take on that, but
He really wanted it to work.
Yeah, he really did. So it turned out that
He's lovely, and I don't want to say anything bad, but he really wanted it to work.
Yeah. Anyway, the vibration issues have not been solved, and
I'm surprised.
When the crews are sent out in them, they all start reporting to hospitals saying that they are incapable of continuing operation. So the other effects include preventing the main armament from stabilizing on the move, damaging the electronic systems that make Ajax a step change in capability, and leading to a high rate of component failure with the idler and rear road wheels shearing off with concerning regularity.
Now, it's making the Vickers MBT look really good in comparison, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some might say this is what happens when you buy your vehicles from Spain rather than Sweden. I've seen comment that one of the Ajax hulls delivered from General Dynamics in Spain was 400 millimeters out of spec, which is 15 inches to our American friends.
And 400 millimeters to be out of spec in a dimensions that was too long or too wide or too high, 400 millimeters. Which that's the clearance of a serious tank. You know, I mean that's a huge margin, and then things rub against each other, and I mean it's awful. But yeah, so as noted, and Tasman just noted in the comments, you know, CV90 from BAE, which is a British company, is just there.
Yep.
And it does its job, and it's really good.
And Maximus does prefer the CV90, so I agree with him. It should just be the... Hey, maybe they should just go with the CV90. Right. Ace rollover in Central Parramatta. Goes global. Doesn't help when thousands of office windows overlook the parade ground.
So this one was my friend Maverick sent me, oh, something's happened on the teleprompter.
Is it overheated? Is it running out of battery?
It's on low battery, but it can live till the end of the show.
All right, we've got probably another 10 minutes. Well, probably another 5 minutes, boys and girls. And so yes, as we said, this will be our longest episode. Yeah.
So there's the issue that anyway they lost their Matilda tank off the back of a
low loader.
Well, it's being described as a loading accident, but the facts aren't particularly clear. But because Lancer Barracks is surrounded by office buildings that overlook it, anyway, people are taking photos.
This is in Parramatta in Western Sydney.
Yeah, but it's very built-up part of Sydney.
But from this point of view, but at least Defence isn't looking to sell off Lancer Barracks, unlike all the other juicy bits of prime real estate that they've got, and not just the historic inner city bits, but a couple of the air bases as well. I mean, when they're talking about selling off Richmond Air Base and Williamtown, Ralph Williams down in Melbourne, it's a case of, wow, they're not just selling off the Victoria Barracks in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, because they're all called Victoria Barracks. That doesn't get annoying for anybody who might happen to work in an environment where you need to know which Vic Barracks you're talking about. But, of course, all these places have been around since the 1860s. And built then.
Lancer Barracks was...
Yeah, Lancer Barracks was the oldest besides Anglesey Barracks down in Tasmania. So it's the... So Lancer Barracks is older, but it's not being looked at being sold off. So the Victoria Barracks in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne are the ones being sold off. They're worth billions and billions of dollars of inner city real estate. But then again, there's the heritage found listings for them.
Anyway, I want to talk about Mike's research, the website, which we've talked about before. Mike does amazing work. We
run out of batteries.
We've everything's exceeded its capacity. But so Mike's research wrote an article on the Churchill and Cromwell tanks in Korea, and there's a few takeaways I want to cover. The Churchill, one of the Churchills in Korea was called the Gynaelator 2. Which appears to mean some sort of medical device for accessing women's bits. Hello to the 4% of women who make up our audience. Yes.
Lovely to have you.
Other Churchills were called Gerald and George, which makes one wonder what Gerald and George got up to. Anyway, all these tanks had names starting with G. The British troops in Korea faced minus 48 degrees centigrade temperatures.
Now, just remember, boys and girls, minus 40 in Fahrenheit and centigrade are the same. So that's where they meet.
Yeah, anyway, but it's terrifyingly cold with no winter gear or sleeping bags. And I've spent a lot of time camping, and I would struggle to stay outside in the cold below minus 10. Even with winter gear.
I've been at minus 25 or so in Japanese ski fields at night.
Yeah, well, were you moving and do we?
Yeah, it was cold. It was really cold.
Yeah, it's terrifyingly cold.
I wasn't standing around. It was really cold.
Other interesting parts of the article were that centaurs were still in use as bulldozers and artillery observers. I found it interesting there was a lack of spare parts for Churchills and Cromwells. Churchill and Cromwell's and their operators appear to have been dumped in the theatre rather than properly planned for sustainment and winter survival. And I was really touched by the last signal from Captain Astley Cooper of Cooper Force as they were lost in the Battle of Happy Valley. It's bloody rough, signalled Captain Astley Cooper. It's also fascinating that ARVs and bridge layers were never out of action or fashion, no matter how old they were. And for all that the British try to say that the Churchill performed well in Korea, it is worth noting they were completely removed from service in 1952. So they weren't performing so well that everyone wanted to keep them around. Anywho, Rob has... do you want to try turning it on?
Is it on? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Rob's put more batteries in the... there we go. All right, sorry, folks. We're just... yep.
Is it actually going? All right. How do we go backwards?
Let's go. There we go. All right. Yay, it's working. Thank you, Rob.
All right. Russia has plenty of fighting vehicles for their new way of war. Tanks are being used either as sniping artillery from hardened positions or as engineering vehicles to push mine rollers leading assaults. IFVs are becoming rarer, but lighter APCs like the BTR family becoming more common.
So this was a Euromaidan story that we're referencing. Yep.
To some extent, this is adaptation and coping rather than anything approaching strategy, but apparently they can sustain this year's rate of loss out to 2030, which is unhappy news for Ukraine.
So the point is that this article, which was really surprising news for me, was that for all the horrendous losses, thousands of armoured vehicles a year that the Russians are digging out of supplies and refurbishing and rebuilding, for a very broad definition of armoured vehicle, faster than they're losing. But they're going from T90s at the start of the war to T62s down to T55s. So there is a loss of capability as they're doing this, but it does indicate that and it looks like that they think that as well, that they can continue taking these losses and crunching Ukraine, and it's unpleasant to watch someone get messed up like this. Yeah.
And for those who want to know that, what do you think about the Kingfisher drone? I'm quite liking it. It is distinctively different from the basic Kingfisher.
What's the ABV on this?
8.
Less than 8%.
Less than 8%.
That is the weirdest description of ABV I've ever seen.
7.9.
7.9.
All right. It does taste different from the normal Kingfisher. It's quite nice for a hot.
To be honest, it tastes like bad British strong beer. And, I mean, yeah, it's... I can't imagine myself ever choosing to buy this in a pub.
No.
Unless it's like, I just want to get fucked up, in which case I'd just buy some spirits. But
I don't like spirits that much these days. But anyway, so look, I've got no dramas with it. It's as I said during Multicultural Day in Canberra. It's a lovely beer to have a tall boy of as you wander around having barbecued meat on the stick. I've done that plenty of times.
So Alan said he was in the DMZ in negative 23 in a sleeping bag. But you did have a sleeping bag, Alan. That's our point. But I would still say I'm willing to guess you didn't have a great night there.
No, it's cold.
Yeah, it's cold. Your toes get messed up. Yeah.
All right, Czech T-72s can't shoot straight. Italian fire control systems, supposedly. No good for Ukraine. That's okay. Ukraine not planning any armored assaults anyway. What are you saying about there, John?
Basically, the Ukraine was promised these Czech T-72s.
Right.
But they'd been upgraded in decades ago with Italian fire control systems that have completely failed. And it might have been a millennium bug or something. But
was it Italian or was it Marconi, which basically means BAE?
It was not.
Because it sounds like BAE to me. BAE is lots of really good at buggering things up.
It sounds very BAE-like. But anyway, that's the end of the show, Rob.
2 hours, 38 minutes later. This is, as we said, it's a long one, boys and girls. So we hope you've enjoyed it. We have drunk a lot of beer. We are.
Thank you to everyone who has watched the show live, because
you've hung out with us and put up with us, and Look,
hey, Paul Hardbottle joined. Paul, it's really good to see you. So that's fantastic. And anyway, everyone, we are...
have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you in January again. And who knows what we'll be talking about there, but we'll come up with something. It'll probably be later January rather than early, because we'll be off doing fun things at beaches and other places.
All right. And on that note,